They laughed when she walked through that door. Wrong shoes, wrong posture, wrong everything for a place that reeked of gunpowder and testosterone. But 60 minutes later, every man in that room would be holding his breath, and a black helicopter would shatter their world. Because Lena Cross wasn't lost. She was exactly where she needed to be. And what happened next would prove that the quietest person in the room can be the most dangerous. Before we dive in, if you're hooked already, smash that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. Stick around till the very end, because what you think you know, you don't. The pneumatic hiss of the door closing behind her sounded like a death rattle in the sudden silence. Lena Cross stepped into Rocky Mountain Armory at exactly 2:47 p.m. on a Tuesday that felt like any other Tuesday. Until it wasn't. The fluorescent lights overhead buzzed with that particular frequency that makes your teeth ache if you listen too long. Beneath her worn Converse sneakers, the industrial tile was scuffed from years of boot traffic, marked with the arrogance of men who believed they owned every inch of ground they walked on. She didn't belong here. Anyone could see that. Her jacket was faded denim, frayed at the cuffs. Her jeans had a paint stain on the left knee, robin's egg blue, like she'd been helping someone with a nursery. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, no makeup, no jewelry except a thin silver watch with a scratched face. She looked like someone's sister, someone's daughter, someone who'd wandered in looking for directions to the organic grocery store 3 blocks over. The store smelled like Hop's No. 9 solvent and masculine insecurity. Behind the counter, a clerk named Derek Mullins, 26, 2 years out of community college, AR-15 enthusiast, 3DU is, looked up from his phone. His eyes traveled over her in the way men do when they've already written the punchline. Lost, sweetheart? His voice carried across the showroom like he was announcing it. Bakery's next door. They do a real nice cupcake. Laughter erupted from the back corner where 4 men stood clustered around a display of tactical shotguns. The sound was sharp, performative. The kind of laughter that's less about humor and more about establishing hierarchy. Lena didn't flinch. Her eyes moved across the wall of firearms with the same casual attention someone might give a wine list. Interested, but not impressed. Actually, she said, her voice quiet enough that they had to stop laughing to hear it, I'm exactly where I meant to be. Derek leaned forward on his elbows, grin spreading. That right? You looking for something pink? We got a ladies' special over there, 9mm, purple grip, real cute. More laughter. A man in a grunt-style t-shirt, Marcus Webb, former Army reservist, admin discharge, never saw combat, slapped the counter. Oh, hell, Derek, don't scare her off. She probably just wants pepper spray. Do I look scared? Lena asked. The question landed differently than they expected. No tremor in her voice, no defensive edge, just genuine curiosity like she was asking about the weather. Marcus straightened slightly. Nah, you look confused. Interesting. Lena took 3 steps deeper into the store, her sneakers making small squeaking sounds that seemed too vulnerable for the space. Because I'm not. From the back office, the owner emerged, Thomas Keller, 58, ex-Marine turned businessman, 22 years running this store, proud member of 3 different shooting clubs. He had the kind of weathered face that came from believing his own stories for too long. Help you find something, miss? His tone was friendlier than Derek's, but only marginally. The kind of friendly that's really just politeness covering condescension. Lena's eyes settled on a section of the wall behind the counter where the higher-end rifles were mounted in locked displays. You carry ballista platform configurations? The room temperature dropped 5 degrees. Derek's grin faltered. The what? Ballista platform, Lena repeated, like she was ordering coffee. Phantom sight integration, Magnum configuration. I'm assuming you'd keep something like that in the back. Insurance reasons. Thomas Keller's expression shifted, subtle, but there, a tightening around the eyes. Where'd you hear about ballista? I didn't hear about it, Lena said. I've used it. Silence dropped like a guillotine blade. Because here's what they knew, what every serious firearms person knew. The ballista wasn't commercial. It wasn't military standard either. It was a specialized weapons platform developed for long-range precision work in extreme conditions, the kind of thing that existed in specifications and classified testing ranges, but not in civilian conversation. The Phantom Sight system had been discontinued 4 years ago after a contract dispute with the DoD. The Magnum configuration Lena was describing hadn't been publicly acknowledged to exist, and this woman in dollar store sneakers had just recited the exact terminology. Marcus pushed off from the wall, moving closer. He had 6 inches and 80 pounds on her. "You're full of it." "Am I?" Lena didn't retreat, didn't brace, just stood there, like gravity affected her differently than everyone else. "Lady, I did 8 years in the Army." "Reserves," Lena corrected softly. "Admin, never deployed." Marcus's face went red. "How the hell would you—" "Your patch." She nodded toward his shoulder. "That's not a deployment unit. And you're holding your weight wrong. No one who's carried a ruck for real stands like that. Your left shoulder sits higher, probably from an old injury. Civilian? Basketball, maybe? High school." The color drained from Marcus's face because she was right. Torn rotator cuff, junior year, state semifinals. "Lucky guess," he muttered. "Sure," Lena said. "Lucky." Derek came around the counter now, trying to regain control of whatever was happening. "Okay, cool party trick. You looked us up online or something. Real cute. But you still haven't told us why you're actually here." "I did tell you." Lena's eyes moved back to Thomas. "I'm looking for precision models. I assume you still stock the Mark IV tactical series. That I can actually see." Thomas studied her for a long moment. The store had gone quiet except for the ventilation system's low hum and the distant sound of traffic outside. Through the front windows, afternoon sunlight cut across the floor in geometric patterns, illuminating dust particles floating in the air like tiny dying stars. "You said you've used ballista," Thomas said carefully. "Where?" "Northern border. Winter operation. 3 years ago." "Which border?" Lena smiled, not friendly, not unfriendly, just patient. "The cold one." A man who'd been silent until now spoke up from near the ammunition display. His name was Ray Chen, 42, former contractor, 2 tours in Afghanistan, actually knew his way around a weapon. "There was an operation," he said slowly. "Didn't make the news, classified, border dispute, Russian side, temperature dropped to -40. They sent in a specialized team for extraction work." "Extraction," Lena agreed. "That was all men," Ray said. "All male operators. I knew 2 of them." "You knew 3 of them," Lena corrected. "Hendricks, Paulson, and Torres. Torres took shrapnel in the shoulder on day 2. Hendricks developed frostbite. Paulson was fine, but he wouldn't shut up about his ex-wife, which was almost worse than the cold." Ray's mouth opened, closed. "How?" "Because I was the one who extracted them." The statement hung in the air like smoke. "Bullshit," Marcus said, but his voice had lost its conviction. "You don't look strong enough to carry a wounded man," Derek added, but he was backing toward the counter now, unconsciously putting distance between them. "I don't need to look strong," Lena said quietly. "I just need to be strong." Thomas Keller walked to the wall and removed a rifle from the display, a Remington 700, good quality but nothing special. He checked the chamber with practiced efficiency, confirmed it was empty, and set it on the counter. "Pick that up," he said. Lena approached the counter. The rifle was a standard model, around 9 pounds unloaded. Not heavy by firearms standards, but substantial enough. Most people who weren't experienced would use 2 hands, would check the weight distribution, would maybe struggle a bit with the balance. Lena reached out with her right hand only. Her fingers wrapped around the stock just forward of the trigger guard. Wrong place for leverage, mechanically disadvantaged. She lifted. The rifle came up like it was made of foam. One-handed, perfectly level, zero shake. She held it there for 3 seconds, long enough for every man in that room to process what they were seeing, then set it down with the same casual control. "Okay," Derek said, voice thin. "Okay, that's... You work out or something?" "Something," Lena agreed. Ray Chen moved closer, his contractor instincts kicking in. He was reading her now the way he'd been trained to read threats and assets in hostile environments. The way she stood, weight distributed, center of gravity low, nothing wasted. the way her eyes tracked movement in her peripheral vision without obviously looking. The minimal tells. "You're not military," he said. "Wrong bearing, not LEO either. Too quiet." "Correct. So what are you?" Lena's hand went to her backpack, a worn canvas thing that looked like she'd bought it at a thrift store. The men tensed slightly, hands drifting toward their own weapons in that unconscious way people do when their lizard brain registers threat. She pulled out a water bottle, took a drink, put it back. "Thirsty," she said. "Don't play games," Thomas said, and now his voice had an edge. "You walk in here. You start dropping classified terminology. You claim you were on an operation that officially didn't happen." "I didn't say it didn't happen," Lena interrupted. "I said it didn't make the news. There's a difference." "Show me proof." "Of what?" "Any of it. Credentials. ID. Something that proves you're not just some blogger who read too many Tom Clancy novels." Lena considered this. "What would convince you?" "I don't know," Thomas said. "Surprise me." She thought for a moment, then. Torres had a tattoo on his left forearm. A compass rose with coordinates. 37.0902 degrees north, 95.7129 degrees west. Geographic center of the continental United States. He got it after his daughter was born in Kansas City. Said it reminded him what he was fighting for. Hendricks collected vintage Zippo lighters, had 17 in his pack when we extracted him, which was stupid because of the weight, but he said each one came from a different dead relative, and he wasn't leaving family behind. Paulson's ex-wife was named Jennifer. She left him for his brother, and yes, he would not shut up about it. Talked about her for 6 hours straight while we humped through the snow. I can tell you what she did for a living, where they met, and the exact wording of the note she left on the kitchen table. The silence that followed was different now, heavier. Ray pulled out his phone with shaking hands, scrolled through contacts, hit dial, put it on speaker. It rang 4 times. "Yeah?" A man's voice, rough with sleep or drinking or both. "Torres. It's Ray. Quick question. You got coordinates tattooed on your arm?" Pause. "How the hell do you know about that?" "What are they?" "Why?" "Just tell me." Another pause. 37.0902 north, 95.7129 west. Geographic center of... Ray hung up. His hand was shaking harder now. "Okay," Marcus said, but his voice had gone up half an octave. "Okay, so she talked to Torres. So what? Doesn't prove..." "I never talked to Torres after the operation," Lena said. "We don't keep in touch. We don't send Christmas cards. That's not how this works." Derek's face had gone pale. "How what works?" Instead of answering, Lena looked at Thomas. "The range out back, is it operational?" "Why?" "Because I think we've moved past talking." Thomas stared at her for a long moment. The afternoon light shifted slightly, shadows lengthening across the floor. Somewhere outside, a car alarm went off and then stopped. "Marcus," Thomas said quietly, "go set up a target." "Sir?" "Do it. Long range, maximum distance." Marcus hesitated, then moved toward the back door that led to the outdoor range. The store had a 100-yard setup behind the building, nothing fancy, but adequate for testing and demonstration. "What are we doing?" Derek asked. "We're calling her bluff," Thomas said, but he didn't sound convinced anymore. Lena waited patiently while they set up. Through the back windows, she could see Marcus placing a standard bullseye target on the far stand, the kind with concentric circles and a small red center. Ray joined him, and they had a brief discussion that involved pointing and gesturing before they came back inside. "Target set," Marcus said. 100 yards. Wind's negligible. Left to right, maybe 2 miles per hour. Thomas went to the safe and pulled out a rifle. Nothing exotic, a standard Ruger Precision in .308. He loaded a single round with deliberate care, engaged the safety, and placed it on the counter. "One shot," he said. "You put it in the black, I'll consider listening to whatever story you're selling." Lena picked up the rifle. Checked the chamber even though she'd watched him load it. Checked the safety. Basic weapons discipline, the kind that's burned into muscle memory through thousands of repetitions. "Can I get a spotter?" she asked. "Don't push it," Thomas said. She smiled slightly and moved toward the range door. The outdoor area was a narrow corridor running behind the building with high concrete walls on either side, noise abatement and safety. The target stood at the far end, a white square with black rings that looked very small from this distance. Lena stepped up to the firing line. The men gathered behind her, 6 of them now, a few more having emerged from the back areas when word spread that something interesting was happening. She settled into position, standing, no rest, no support, the most mechanically difficult way to take a precision shot. "You know that's a freehand position, right?" Derek said. "Even experienced shooters use—" "Quiet," Ray said sharply. Lena's breathing changed, slower, deeper, the kind of respiratory control that takes years to develop. Her heart rate was dropping. They couldn't see it, but if they'd had monitoring equipment, they would have watched it fall from resting to something approaching sleep state. 60 beats per minute, 55, 50. Her body went still in a way that seemed wrong for a living person. The rifle came up smoothly. No shake, no adjustment, just one fluid motion. She exhaled half a breath and fired. The crack of the gunshot was sharp in the enclosed space, echoing off the concrete walls. A single moment of thunder. Silence. 1 second. 2. 3. Then, the distant clang of the bullet hitting the steel target frame. Marcus had a spotting scope. He looked through it, adjusted focus, looked again. "What is it?" Thomas demanded. Marcus's voice came out strangled. "Dead center, perfect center. No, that's not possible. Not from standing, not at this distance, not with iron sights in this light. The angle alone." He stepped back from the scope. His face had gone gray. "Let me see," Ray said, pushing forward. He looked through the scope for a long moment, then straightened slowly. "Jesus Christ." "What?" Derek grabbed the scope, looked, went silent. Thomas took his turn. When he lowered the scope, his hand was trembling, because the bullet hadn't just hit the center. It had hit the exact geometric middle of the target, the kind of precision that required understanding ballistics, wind drift, barrel harmonics, and trigger control at a level that took most professionals years to develop. From a standing position, with a weapon she'd never fired before, in under 5 seconds of preparation. "That's not luck," someone whispered from the back. "No," Ray agreed quietly. "That's not luck." They turned back to look at Lena. She was already lowering the rifle, engaging the safety, removing the magazine. Basic clearing procedure, like the shot had meant nothing. "There was an operative," Ray said slowly, voice barely above a whisper. "Northern operations, classified work. They called her Ghost because she—" He stopped. Every eye in that corridor locked on Lena. She set the rifle down carefully on the bench. "You were saying?" "Ghost," Ray finished, because she moved through terrain without leaving tracks. Extraction specialist, high-value targets in hostile environments. She was... "You were..." "Was," Lena agreed. Past tense. "Why are you here?" Thomas asked. The hostility had drained from his voice, replaced by something that sounded almost like fear. "I told you. I need precision models." "For what? Does it matter?" "Yeah," Marcus said, finding his voice again. "Yeah, it matters. You can't just walk in here and eat and what?" Lena turned to face him fully for the first time. "Be better than you expected? Break your assumptions. Make you question what you think you know about women and weapons and who gets to be dangerous." Marcus's jaw worked, but no sound came out. "I'm here," Lena continued, her voice still quiet but carrying a weight now that made the air feel thick. "Because I need equipment. I have money. You have inventory. This is supposed to be a simple transaction." "Nothing about this is simple," Thomas said. "No," Lena agreed. "I suppose it isn't." Derek had been silent, but now he laughed, a thin, brittle sound. "You know what? I don't care who you are. You could be the Queen of England with a sniper rifle. You still can't just..." The sound of rotor blades cut through the air. Distant at first, then growing rapidly louder. The distinctive whoop, whoop, whoop of a helicopter, and not the traffic birds that occasionally flew over the city. This was something heavier, military grade. Everyone froze. The sound grew louder, closer, until it was directly overhead. Wind began whipping through the range corridor, kicking up dust and debris. The noise was deafening, a deep thrumming that you felt in your chest cavity. Through the gap between buildings, they could see it descending into the parking lot, a black UH-60. No markings, windows tinted so dark they looked like holes punched into reality. "What the hell?" Derek started. The helicopter touched down. The rotors continued spinning at idle. The side door slid open with mechanical precision. A man stepped out. Late 30s, dark suit that cost more than Derek made in a month. Military posture, cold eyes behind prescription sunglasses. He walked toward the store's back entrance like he owned every inch of ground between here and the horizon. He pushed through the door without knocking. Water dripped from somewhere, a leak in the ceiling, steady and rhythmic. The helicopter noise made it impossible to hear your own thoughts. The man in the suit walked directly to Lena. Didn't acknowledge anyone else. Pulled a manila envelope from inside his jacket and handed it to her. She took it, opened it, read the single sheet of paper inside. Her expression didn't change, but something shifted in her posture. A kind of settling, like someone accepting the inevitable. "When?" she asked. "Now," the man said. His voice was flat, bureaucratic. The voice of someone who'd delivered bad news so many times, it no longer registered as bad or good, just data. "I need 3 days." "You have 2 hours." Lena's jaw tightened. "That's not enough time to—" "2 hours," the man repeated. "The asset is in motion. The window closes at 1900 hours. You're the only one positioned to make the intercept." "I'm retired." "No one retires from this. You know that." The paper in Lena's hand trembled slightly, the first sign of anything resembling emotion she'd shown since walking into the store. Thomas found his voice. "What is this? What's happening?" The man in the suit finally acknowledged the other people in the room. His eyes swept across them with all the warmth of a surveillance camera. "This conversation is classified," he said. "You did not see this helicopter. You did not see me. And you sure as hell didn't see her." He nodded toward Lena. "Any questions will be met with federal charges. Any documentation, photos, videos, social media posts will result in immediate prosecution. Are we clear?" No one answered. I said, "Are we clear?" "Yes," Thomas managed. "Good." The man turned back to Lena. 2 hours. Extraction point is already designated. You know the protocol." "I need equipment," Lena said. "Already on board." Everything is already on board," the man interrupted, "including the ballista platform you were asking about. Phantom sight, Magnum configuration, freshly calibrated. Waiting for you." Lena's eyes closed briefly. When they opened again, something had changed in them. The civilian mask had cracked, and underneath it was something colder, sharper, something that had probably never been fully civilian at all. "Understood," she said. The man turned and walked back toward the helicopter without another word. Lena folded the paper, tucked it into her jacket pocket, and followed. "Wait," Ray called out. "Wait, you can't just—" Lena paused at the door, looked back. "The shot I just made," she said. "That was me being rusty, being out of practice, 3 years removed from field work." She let that sink in for a moment. The operation Torres and Hendricks and Paulson needed extraction from? The reason they needed extraction was because the original team failed. All dead, ambushed in a blizzard by a force 3 times their size. I went in alone, got all 3 of them out, 0 casualties. "That's impossible," Marcus whispered. "Impossible is just another word for difficult," Lena said. "You all laughed when I walked in here, made assumptions, decided who I was based on what I looked like, how I dressed, because I didn't fit your idea of what dangerous looks like." She took 1 step back toward them. "Let me tell you something about dangerous. Dangerous doesn't announce itself, doesn't flex, doesn't need your approval or your respect. Dangerous just is. And the most dangerous people I've ever met? They looked like someone you'd never give a second glance. They looked like me." The helicopter's turbines increased pitch. "Time to go." "Who are you?" Derek asked, and this time there was no mockery in his voice, just genuine fear. Lena smiled, and it was the saddest thing any of them had ever seen. "I'm nobody," she said. "I was never here. And in about 6 hours, you're all going to realize that forgetting me is the smartest thing you ever did." She walked out into the rotor wash. The wind whipped her hair loose from the ponytail, but she didn't try to fix it, just walked straight to the helicopter like she was walking to a car, climbed inside, and the door slid shut behind her. The helicopter lifted immediately. No gradual ascent, just a sharp vertical rise that pushed air down like a hammer. It rotated 90 degrees and accelerated away, disappearing over the buildings within seconds. The silence that followed was absolute. For a long moment, no one moved. No one spoke. Then Thomas walked slowly back to the counter and sat down on the stool behind it. His hands were shaking. "That didn't happen," he said quietly. "Sir?" Derek's voice cracked. "That didn't happen," Thomas repeated, louder now. "We didn't see that. She wasn't here. There was no helicopter. We're going to go back to work, and we're going to forget this afternoon ever occurred." "But," I said, "forget it." Thomas looked at each of them in turn. That man in the suit wasn't making idle threats. Federal charges mean federal prison. I don't know what we just witnessed, but I know enough to know we don't want to be part of it. Understood? Slowly, reluctantly, they nodded. Marcus went to the range and retrieved the target. The bullet hole was exactly center, a perfect circle punched through paper and backing. He stared at it for a long time, then crumpled it up and threw it in the trash. Ray Chen pulled out his phone to call Torres back, then thought better of it and put it away. Derek stood behind the counter, replaying every word he'd said when Lena first walked in, feeling sick to his stomach. Outside, the sun continued its descent toward the horizon. Traffic moved along the street. A dog barked somewhere. The world kept turning like nothing had changed. But something had changed. In that store, in those men, something fundamental had shifted. An assumption had been broken. A certainty had been shattered. The door chimed as a customer walked in, a middle-aged man looking for ammunition, and Derek greeted him with a professional smile that didn't reach his eyes. Business continued. But later that night, when Derek went home to his apartment, he would stand in front of the mirror for a long time, thinking about the woman in worn sneakers who'd lifted a rifle one-handed and shot with inhuman precision, thinking about assumptions, about underestimation, about all the times he'd judged someone based on appearance and never known how wrong he might have been. He would think about the helicopter and the man in the suit and the manila envelope, and he would realize that somewhere in the world there were people operating at levels he couldn't imagine, doing things he'd never know about, making decisions that affected lives in ways that never made the news. And he would understand, finally, that the scariest thing about power isn't when it announces itself. It's when it walks in wearing Converse sneakers and a faded jacket, looking like someone's sister, and you never see it coming until it's already too late. But watch him. The next morning, when Derek arrived at work, there was a sedan parked across the street. Dark, tinted windows, government plates. It sat there all day. No one got out. No one approached the store. But the message was clear. We're watching. We know what you saw. Keep your mouth shut. Thomas never opened the safe where he kept the ballista platform specs he'd been asked to source 6 months ago by a contact who'd paid in cash and never followed up. He thought it was a dead deal. Now he understood it had never been about buying. It had been about verification, about checking his inventory, about seeing if he had access to the things that officially didn't exist. Lena Cross had been testing him, and he'd failed the test by succeeding. The knowledge sat in his gut like a stone. 3 days later, he sold the store, retired early, moved to New Mexico, and never touched a firearm again. Ray Chen tried to call Torres 7 more times over the next week. The number was disconnected. He tried Hendricks. Disconnected. Paulson. Disconnected. Every man who'd been on that northern operation had disappeared from the grid like they'd never existed. And Ray realized, with a cold certainty that made his hands shake, that erasing people was probably easier than erasing operations. That maybe the reason nobody talked about that extraction wasn't just classification. Maybe it was because everyone who could talk about it had been made to disappear, everyone except Lena. And now she was gone too, swallowed by whatever machinery creates ghosts and deploys them into the world's dark corners. Marcus started having nightmares. In them, he was back in that moment when she'd corrected him about his service. Reserves, admin, never deployed, and the shame burned fresh every time. He'd spent 8 years telling people he was a veteran, accepting thanks for service that consisted mainly of weekend drills and paperwork, and she'd seen through it in seconds. In the dreams, she would turn to face him, and behind her eyes would be all the real violence she'd seen, all the actual weight of combat, and it would crush him where he stood. He started drinking more. The store, meanwhile, developed a reputation. Word spread in the quiet way word spreads among people who pay attention, that something had happened there, that a woman had walked in and walked out and left everyone changed. No one knew the details, but the story grew anyway, mutating in the retelling. She'd been a spy. She'd been an assassin. She'd been testing them. She'd been recruiting them. She'd been a ghost made flesh for one brief hour before returning to whatever shadow realm she'd emerged from. The truth, as always, was both simpler and more complex. Lena Cross had been a tool, a precision instrument created by people with resources and needs that don't appear in any budget. She had walked into that store because someone had identified it as a potential supply chain risk, a civilian vendor with access to materials that shouldn't be civilian accessible. She'd been sent to verify the intel. The recall order was real. The operation was real. And somewhere, right now, she was doing something that would never make the news, would never be acknowledged, would never be thanked. She was being dangerous in the way that only the invisible can be. And the men in that gun store, with all their guns and all their bravado and all their assumptions about what strength looks like, would spend the rest of their lives knowing they'd been in the presence of something they couldn't comprehend. Something that had let them laugh, had let them mock, had let them feel superior, right up until the moment it showed them exactly how small they really were. The helicopter had taken Lena north, toward the mountains. Inside, the ballista platform waited in its case, along with everything else she'd need for an operation she hadn't wanted to take. But wanting didn't matter. It never had. She checked her watch, the scratched silver one that had been her mother's, and felt time running out like water through cupped hands. 2 hours had become 90 minutes. The window was closing. And somewhere in those mountains, a target was moving who had no idea that a woman in worn sneakers had just been activated to stop them. Permanently. Lena closed her eyes and felt the old familiar coldness settle into her bones. The coldness that made impossible shots possible, that turned fear into fuel, that allowed one person to extract 3 from a kill zone in minus 40-degree weather. The coldness that had earned her the name Ghost. Not because she was dead, but because she was the thing that came for you when death wasn't enough. When they needed someone alive but broken, extracted but destroyed, captured but wishing for the mercy of a bullet. That was what Ghost did. That was what Lena Cross had been. And as the helicopter banked hard toward whatever waited in those mountains, she felt herself sliding back into that identity like pulling on old gloves, worn, familiar, perfectly fitted to hands that had held too many weapons to count. Below, the city shrank. The gun store became a dot. The men inside became memories. And Lena Cross became Ghost once more, because the world wasn't done with her yet. The world was never done with people like her. It just pretended they didn't exist until the moment it needed them. The helicopter's interior smelled like hydraulic fluid and old coffee. Lena sat on the jump seat, hands resting on her knees, watching the city dissolve into foothills through the small porthole window. The man in the suit sat across from her, typing on a tablet with mechanical precision. "You're angry," he said without looking up. "I'm retired." "You said that already." He kept typing. It wasn't true then either. Lena's jaw tightened. The helicopter banked hard right, engines whining as they climbed elevation. Her stomach dropped, but her face stayed neutral. 3 years of civilian life hadn't erased the muscle memory of insertion flights. "How long have you been watching me?" she asked. "Since you bought the apartment in Denver. 14 months, 2 weeks, 3 days. He still didn't look up. "Nice place. 4th floor, corner unit. Good sight lines. You chose it for tactical reasons, but told yourself it was for the light. You had no right. We have every right." Now he looked up, and his eyes were flat as stones. "You signed papers, made promises, accepted consequences. That was a different life." "No." He set the tablet down. "That was 3 years ago. This is the same life. You just pretended otherwise." The words hit harder than Lena expected. She turned back to the window, watching pine trees blur past below. The helicopter was moving fast now, following terrain contours with aggressive proximity, nap of Earth flying, designed to avoid radar detection, which meant wherever they were going, someone might be watching. "Tell me about the target," she said. The man pulled a file from a case at his feet. Actual paper, which meant serious security protocols. He handed it across. The folder was thin, maybe 20 pages. Lena opened it. The first page was a photograph. Surveillance quality, zoomed and grainy. A man in his 50s, gray hair, expensive suit, Slavic features, eyes that had seen things and done things and regretted nothing. Alexei Volkov, the man in the suit said. Former GRU. Current status, independent contractor. Specializes in high-value asset acquisition and liquidation. Meaning? Meaning he steals secrets and kills people, usually in that order. Lena flipped pages. More photos. Volkov at a cafe in Prague. Volkov boarding a private jet in Istanbul. Volkov walking through what looked like a safe house in Berlin. What did he steal? Information, technical specifications, names. The man's voice stayed level. 3 days ago, he infiltrated a research facility outside Boulder. Classified project, defense application. He got in, copied files, got out. Very professional. Then why do you need me? Send a team, arrest him. It's not that simple. It never is, Lena muttered. The man ignored the comment. Volkov is meeting a buyer tonight, 1900 hours. Remote location in the Rockies. We need the data back, and we need to know who the buyer is. So intercept the meeting. We would, except the meeting location changes every 30 minutes. He's using a rolling protocol, dead drops, coded signals, counter-surveillance that's frankly impressive. We've had 6 teams trying to track him for 72 hours. He's burned them all. Lena studied another photograph. Volkov standing next to a dark SUV, talking on a phone. Even in the grainy surveillance shot, his body language radiated confidence. This wasn't some amateur playing spy games. This was a professional who'd survived decades in the worst environments intelligence work had to offer. Why me? She asked. Because you're not a team. You're one person. Low signature, high effectiveness. He paused. And because you've worked in these mountains before. You know the terrain. That last part was true. Lena had done 2 operations in the Colorado Rockies during her active years. 1 extraction, 1 interdiction. Both had gone sideways in ways that still occasionally woke her up at 3 a.m. with her heart hammering. What's the ROE? Rules of engagement, old habits. Retrieve the data, identify the buyer. If Volkov resists, the man made a small gesture with his hand. Use discretion. Discretion meaning? Meaning we'd prefer him alive for questioning, but we need the data more than we need him breathing. Lena closed the file. And if I say no? For the first time, the man smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. You won't. You sound certain. I am. He leaned forward slightly. You've been plain civilian, Lena. Yoga classes, farmer's market on Sundays. That coffee shop where you pretend to read but actually watch everyone who comes through the door. You're bored out of your mind. I'm at peace. You're dying slowly. He picked up his tablet again. People like you don't retire. You just delay the inevitable until something pulls you back. I'm doing you a favor. Some favor. You'll understand when it's done. The helicopter dropped suddenly, following a valley between 2 ridges. Lena's stomach lurched, but she kept her expression neutral. Through the window, she could see snow on the higher peaks, early season dusting that wouldn't last but looked pristine against the dark evergreens. Timeline, she said. We have his last known position from 40 minutes ago. Heading northwest on Forest Service roads. Our satellite coverage is limited, cloud cover moving in, but we think he's circling toward a location near Breckenridge. That gives you maybe 2 hours to intercept before he reaches the meet point. Extraction? Same bird. We'll stay on station, out of audible range. You'll have a radio. Call when you're ready for pickup. Lena nodded slowly, mind already shifting gears. 2 hours. Unknown terrain. A professional target who'd burned 6 teams. Data that couldn't fall into enemy hands. A buyer whose identity was worth risking an operative. Standard impossible task. The kind she used to eat for breakfast. Equipment, she said. The man gestured toward the back of the cabin. A tactical case sat strapped to the bulkhead. Matte black, reinforced corners, serious locks. Lena moved to it, unlatched the clasps. The lid opened with a pneumatic hiss. Inside, nested in foam, the ballista platform. She'd been telling the truth in the gun store. She had used this system before. Northern border operation. exactly like she'd said. But she'd left out the part where that operation had nearly killed her, where she'd taken a shot in minus 40 degrees with hands so numb she could barely feel the trigger, and the target had been moving at 1,800 meters, and the wind had been gusting hard enough to move the bullet trajectory by feet instead of inches. She'd made the shot anyway, because that's what Ghost did. The rifle was beautiful in the way that functional things are beautiful. No wasted lines, no unnecessary components, every element designed for a single purpose. Carbon fiber stock, match-grade barrel. The phantom sight system that had cost more than most people's cars back when it was still being produced. Lena lifted it out. The weight settled into her hands like memory. Ammunition? She asked. Bottom compartment, 12 rounds. Mixed load, standard, armor-piercing, and 2 tracking rounds if you need to mark a vehicle. She checked. 12 rounds in a custom magazine, each one precisely seated, more than enough for what she needed. If she required more than 12 rounds, she was already dead. Comms? He handed her an earpiece, flesh tone, nearly invisible. Encrypted channel. Range is limited in the mountains but should be adequate. Radio discipline. I'll be listening, but I won't talk unless you initiate. Lena fitted the earpiece, tested it with a tap. A small squelch confirmed it was live. Sidearm? Glock 19 suppressed. 4 magazines. Under the rifle. She found it. Standard issue, nothing fancy, but reliable. The suppressor was quality work, professionally threaded. She press-checked the chamber, confirmed the round, holstered it at her hip. Anything else I should know? She asked. The man hesitated. First time he'd shown any uncertainty. What? Lena pressed. Volkov isn't alone. You're just telling me this now? We weren't certain until 20 minutes ago. Satellite picked up thermal signatures, 2 vehicles, multiple personnel. Best guess is he's traveling with a security element. Maybe 4 additional men. Lena felt something cold settle in her chest. So not just interdiction, full combat scenario. Possibly. Possibly, she repeated. That's a hell of a qualifier. You've handled worse odds. That doesn't make it smart. The man's expression hardened. The data he stole, Lena, it's not just defense research. It's names, deep cover operatives. People in positions it took us decades to place. If that information reaches the wrong buyer, we lose assets we can't replace. People die. Operations collapse. Entire networks burn. How many names? 17. 17 lives. 17 people who'd made the same choices Lena had made, who'd accepted the same risks, who are out there right now living borrowed time in hostile territory. Fine, she said, but I want hazard compensation. Already approved. Triple rate. I want my record expunged, full clearance. No more surveillance on my apartment. Done. And I want a real retirement. Papers. Official separation. No more recall orders. The man was quiet for a moment. The helicopter's engines changed pitch, descending now, approaching the drop zone. I can't promise that, he said finally. Why not? Because you're too good at this. Because we have too few people with your skill set. Because the world is getting worse, not better, and we need tools we can rely on. He met her eyes. But I can promise this will be the last time for at least 2 years. No contact. No surveillance. You get your life back. 2 years isn't retirement. It's better than nothing. The helicopter was definitely descending now. Through the window, Lena could see a clearing, small meadow surrounded by aspens, their leaves gone yellow with early fall. Perfect LZ. We're 30 seconds out, the pilot's voice crackled through the intercom. Lena stood, checking her gear with automatic precision. Rifle slung, sidearm secured, spare magazines distributed. The old familiar weight of being armed settling across her shoulders like a coat. One more thing, the man said. What? He pulled a photograph from his jacket pocket and handed it to her. It showed a woman, mid-30s, blonde, professional headshot. She was smiling, but her eyes were serious. The kind of person who'd thought carefully before committing to intelligence work. Sarah Mitchell, the man said, one of the 17 names. She's embedded in Moscow, passing herself off as a tech consultant. Been in place 4 years, engaged to a Russian national who has no idea who she really is. Why are you showing me this? Because if Volkov's data gets out, she'll be arrested within hours. And Russia doesn't do prisoner exchanges anymore. They do televised confessions, followed by life sentences in facilities where people forget you exist. Lena studied the photograph. Sarah Mitchell looked like someone's sister, someone's friend, someone who probably went to yoga classes and farmers markets when she wasn't risking her life for classified objectives. Someone who could have been Lena in a different timeline. "Understood," Lena said quietly, handing the photo back. The helicopter touched down with barely a bump, professional flying. The side door slid open and cold mountain air rushed in, sharp with the smell of pine and altitude. 2 hours, the man shouted over the rotor noise. "Maybe less, move fast." Lena jumped down into the meadow grass, already scanning her surroundings with tactical awareness that had never fully gone dormant. Tree line 40 meters, high ground to the east, prevailing wind northwest at maybe 5 miles per hour. The helicopter lifted immediately, not wasting time. Within seconds, it was banking away, rising, disappearing over the ridgeline. Silence crashed down like a physical force. Lena stood alone in the meadow, surrounded by mountains and sky and the weight of choices she'd thought she'd left behind. Then she started moving. The terrain was rough, rocky, sloped, covered with deadfall that made quiet movement difficult. Lena picked her way northeast toward where the man in the suit had said Volkov's last known position had been. She moved fast but not recklessly, balancing speed against sound discipline. 30 minutes in, she found the first sign, tire tracks on a Forest Service road, fresh enough that the mud hadn't dried. 2 vehicles, just like the satellite data suggested. Heavy tread pattern, SUVs or trucks. She knelt, studying the tracks. The depth suggested significant weight, armored vehicles maybe, or at least heavily loaded. The spacing showed they were traveling together, but not in tight formation. Professional, but not military tight. Lena stood, checking her watch. 1640 hours, 20 minutes ahead of schedule. She kept moving. The forest closed in, thick with undergrowth and fallen timber. Elevation was increasing, her breath came harder, lungs adjusting to the altitude. Somewhere above, a hawk screamed. The sound echoed off the rock faces, distorting distance. At 17:05 hours, she heard engines. Faint, maybe half a mile ahead, muffled by terrain and trees. Lena dropped low, moving more carefully now. The rifle came off her shoulder, held at low ready. Every step calculated, every branch avoided, every sound source mapped. 500 meters further, she reached a ridgeline and went prone, crawling the last 20 feet to the edge. Below, in a small valley carved by a seasonal creek, 2 black SUVs sat idling. Armored, definitely. The way they sat low on their suspension gave it away. Tinted windows, no visible plates. 4 men stood outside the vehicles, spread in a loose perimeter. They weren't casual. These were security professionals, probably former military, carrying themselves with the easy confidence of people who knew how to use the weapons they carried. And they were carrying serious hardware. Lena spotted at least 2 rifles, looked like AKs, maybe AK-74s, and one of the men had something bulkier slung across his back. Grenade launcher, possibly. Professional, she muttered to herself. One of the SUV's doors opened and a 5th man emerged. Alexei Volkov. Even from this distance, Lena recognized him from the file photos. He moved like someone who'd spent his life being hunted and had survived by being smarter than the hunters. His head was on a swivel, scanning the tree line, the rocks, the sky. He said something to his men. They nodded and began packing up. Whatever they'd been doing here, they were ready to move. Lena keyed her radio. "Contact. I have eyes on target. 5 hostiles, 2 vehicles, heavy arms." The response came through her earpiece immediately. "Confirmed. What's your play?" Good question. She could take the shot now. Volkov was maybe 400 meters away, standing relatively still. The ballista could make that shot in her sleep, but the data was probably in one of those vehicles and the buyer was still unknown. Killing Volkov now would abort the meet and leave her with nothing but questions. "I'm going to follow," she said. "See where he leads." "Risky. If you lose him." "I won't." "Your call." The channel went silent. Below, the men climbed back into the vehicles. Engines revved. The SUVs began moving, following the creek bed north. Lena was already moving parallel to them, using the ridgeline for cover. The forest was thick enough to conceal her, but sparse enough to maintain visual contact. She moved fast, pushing her cardio, lungs burning with altitude and exertion. The SUVs drove for 12 minutes, following a route that suggested local knowledge. This wasn't random movement, this was planned. They avoided the main forest roads, stuck to paths that wouldn't show up on civilian maps. At 17:21 hours, they stopped again. This time, the location was more significant. A clearing at the base of a granite cliff face protected on three sides by natural rock formations. Defensible. Good sight lines. Hard to approach without being seen. Smart choice for a meet. Lena circled wide, finding a position on the high ground about 300 meters out. She went prone behind a cluster of boulders, set up the ballista on its bipod, and settled in. Through the phantom sight, the clearing jumped into sharp focus. Volkov stood near the lead SUV, checking his watch. His security team had fanned out into proper defensive positions, two watching the approach road, one on the high ground to the east, one staying close to Volkov. "They know what they're doing," Lena whispered into the radio. "Copy that. Any sign of the buyer?" "Negative, not yet." Well, she waited. Waiting was part of the job, the part nobody talked about, the part that separated professionals from amateurs. The ability to stay perfectly still, muscles locked in uncomfortable positions, mind alert for hours at a time. Lena had once held position for 14 hours in Afghanistan, waiting for a target who never showed. She'd pissed herself around hour 10 because moving would have compromised her position. That's what professionalism looked like, cold, wet, and committed. This wait was shorter. At 17:34 hours, a new vehicle appeared, a Range Rover, dark green, civilian plates. It approached slowly, cautiously, stopping about 50 meters from Volkov's position. The driver's door opened. A woman stepped out. Lena's breath caught, because she recognized her. Not from any file, not from any briefing, from 3 years ago. From the operation that had convinced her to retire. Dr. Catherine Walsh, American, former DARPA researcher. Someone Lena had been told was dead, killed in a lab accident that had been all over the classified briefings. But there she was, alive and well, and walking toward Alexei Volkov like they were old friends. "Houston, we have a problem," Lena said into the radio, voice tight. "What kind of problem?" "The buyer. I know her. She's supposed to be dead." Silence on the other end. Then, "Identify." "Catherine Walsh, DARPA, clearance level, hell, I don't know, high, very high. She worked on projects I wasn't cleared to know about." More silence. She could almost hear the wheels turning, the implications cascading. "Are you certain?" the voice asked. "Positive." "Stand by." The channel went quiet, but Lena could imagine the chaos she'd just caused. If Walsh was alive and buying stolen data from a Russian asset, that meant either she'd defected or she'd been deep cover all along. Either scenario was catastrophic in different ways. Through the scope, Lena watched Walsh approach Volkov. They didn't shake hands, too professional for theatrics. Just stood there talking, body language relaxed but not casual. Walsh handed over something small. Phone, maybe. Or a data drive. Volkov examined it, nodded, handed her a tablet in return. The exchange was happening. "I need orders," Lena said into the radio. No response. "I said I need orders. They're making the exchange right now." Still nothing. "Come on," she muttered. "Don't leave me hanging." 30 seconds of silence. Then a different voice came through her earpiece. Older, authoritative, someone high up the chain. "This is Director Cole. You are weapons-free on both targets. Repeat, weapons-free. Take them both." Lena's finger moved to the trigger guard but didn't enter yet. "Sir, that's a termination order on an American citizen who faked her death and is currently committing treason," Cole interrupted. "You have your orders, operative. Execute." The word operative hit like a slap. Not Lena, not Cross. Operative. A reminder that she wasn't a person right now. She was a tool, and tools didn't question. But tools also didn't have consciences. "I need confirmation this order is coming from. This is a direct order from the highest level. You are authorized to use lethal force. Engage now before they disperse." Below, Walsh was turning back toward her vehicle. Volkov was gesturing to his men. The meet was ending. In 30 seconds they'd be mobile again, and the opportunity would evaporate. Lena's breathing slowed. Heartbeat dropped. The world narrowed to the sight picture, crosshairs settling on Volkov's center mass. Wind was negligible. Range was 310 meters, easy shot. The round would arrive before the sound. Her finger moved into the trigger guard, took up the slack. Steady pressure. Almost there. Then Walsh turned, and for just a moment, her face was fully visible in the scope. And Lena saw it. The expression. The fear. The hunted look of someone who wasn't a traitor, but a target. Someone who was running from something worse than Russian intelligence. Lena's finger froze on the trigger. "Operative, engage," Cole's voice commanded. Below, one of Volkov's security team was scanning the ridgeline with binoculars, professional counter-surveillance. In about 3 seconds, he was going to spot Lena's position. Decision time. Lena shifted the rifle slightly. Instead of Volkov's center mass, the crosshairs settled on the front tire of his lead SUV. She fired. The suppressed shot was still loud in the mountain silence, a sharp crack that echoed off rocks. The tire exploded in a spray of rubber and rim. Chaos erupted below. Volkov's men scattered, dropping into combat positions, weapons coming up. Walsh dove behind her Range Rover. Volkov himself moved with impressive speed for a man his age, using his SUV for cover. "What the hell are you doing?" Cole's voice screamed in her ear. Lena fired again, second tire on the first SUV, then the front tire on the second. "Standing down," she said calmly. "I don't have positive ID on hostile intent. I'm not taking the shot." "You have direct orders." "I have eyes on the situation and you don't." Lena was already moving, breaking down her position, getting ready to relocate before Volkov's team zeroed her location. Something's wrong here. Walsh looks scared, not guilty. And I'm not executing American citizens on maybe intel. She heard other voices in the background on the radio now, shouting, arguing. She pulled the earpiece out and pocketed it. Below, Volkov's team was returning fire toward the ridgeline. Suppressive bursts, not accurate, just putting rounds in her general direction. Rock chips exploded near her position. Lena was already 50 meters away, moving fast through the trees, repositioning. She'd just disobeyed a direct order from a director-level authority. Her career was over, possibly her life. But the look on Walsh's face, that hadn't been the look of a traitor. That had been the look of someone trapped. And Lena Cross, who'd spent 3 years trying to be someone other than Ghost, had just made the kind of choice that separated people from tools. She kept moving through the darkening forest, and behind her the sound of gunfire faded into the wind. The forest swallowed her whole. Branches whipping past, boots finding purchase on loose stone, lungs burning with altitude and adrenaline. Behind her, the gunfire had stopped, but voices carried through the trees, Russian and English mixed, sharp commands that meant Volkov's team was organizing a pursuit. Lena didn't slow down. She crashed through a thicket of scrub oak, emerged on a game trail, and immediately went prone behind a fallen spruce. Her heart hammered, but her hand stayed steady as she brought the ballista up, scanning her back trail through the scope. Nothing yet. But they were coming. She pulled the earpiece from her pocket, hesitated, then fitted it back in place. Immediately, chaos flooded her ear. "Lost visual, repeat. We've lost visual on the operative. Get that bird back in the air. I want thermal imaging on her position." "Sir? If she's gone rogue, we need to activate containment protocols." Then Cole's voice cutting through the noise like a blade. "Cross, I know you can hear me. You just committed career suicide. When we find you, and we will find you, you're looking at federal prosecution, treason charges, life in a cell that doesn't have windows." Lena almost laughed. Almost. "You're making a mistake," Cole continued, his voice dropping to something almost reasonable. "Walsh is dirty. We have evidence. Bank transfers, encrypted communications, meetings in Prague and Istanbul that she never reported. She sold us out, and now she's buying more data to sell. You need to trust the system." "The system," Lena said quietly into the mic, "just ordered me to execute an American citizen without trial. So forgive me if trust is in short supply." Silence. Then, "You don't have all the information. Then give it to me. It's classified above your clearance." "I don't have clearance anymore, remember? You just burned me." Lena shifted position, still watching her back trail. "So either read me in or leave me alone, because right now, the only thing I know for certain is that Walsh looked terrified, and Volkov looked surprised I didn't kill them both. Which tells me this situation is more complicated than your nice, clean narrative." More silence. Lena could hear background voices, muffled arguing, someone saying legal liability, and someone else responding with words she couldn't make out. A branch snapped somewhere below her position. Lena's finger moved to the trigger. Through the scope, a figure emerged from the tree line. One of Volkov's security team, moving with tactical precision, rifle up and scanning. He was good. Professional sweep pattern, checking corners, using terrain for cover. But Lena had the high ground and better optics. She tracked him for 5 seconds, watching his movement pattern, reading his body language. Former military, definitely. Spetsnaz, maybe. Or one of the private military companies that recruited ex-special forces. He paused, listening. Lena didn't breathe. The man's radio crackled. Russian, too distant for Lena to hear clearly. He responded, gestured to someone out of sight, and moved laterally along the slope, away from her position. Lena exhaled slowly. Cole's voice returned. "We're pulling the extraction bird. You're on your own." "Figured. This is your last chance. Return to the LZ, surrender your weapon, submit to debrief. We can still walk this back. Call it temporary psychological stress, combat fatigue, whatever, but you need to come in." "Can't do that." "Why not?" "Because you're lying to me." Lena kept her voice level, emotionless. "You've been lying since the helicopter picked me up. Maybe longer, and I'm done being a tool for people who think I'm too stupid to notice when things don't add up. You're making this personal. It's not personal. It's operational necessity." "Everything's personal eventually," Lena said. "You should have learned that by now." She pulled the earpiece out again, this time crushing it under her boot heel. The small electronic crunch was satisfying in a petty way. Now she was truly alone. No support, no extraction, no backup. Just her, a rifle, and mountains that didn't care if she lived or died. Standard Tuesday, really. Lena moved again, circling wide around Volkov's position, using the terrain for concealment. The sun was dropping toward the western peaks now, shadows lengthening, temperature falling. In another hour, it would be dark, and while night operations were part of her skill set, they gave advantages to whoever knew the terrain better. Right now, that was Volkov. She needed to change the equation. At 17:52 hours, she found what she was looking for, a rock outcropping that overlooked the valley where Walsh's Range Rover was still parked. The vehicle sat alone now, Volkov's damaged SUVs having limped away on their shredded tires, probably heading for a backup location. But Walsh's vehicle remained, which meant Walsh was either still here or had left on foot. Lena scanned the area through the scope, searching for heat signatures, movement, anything. There, a small flicker near the creek bed, maybe 200 meters from the vehicle. She adjusted magnification. Catherine Walsh sat behind a boulder, knees drawn up, arms wrapped around herself. Even from this distance, Lena could see she was shaking. Not the posture of a confident traitor, the posture of someone scared and alone and out of options. Lena made a decision that would probably get her killed. She started down the slope. Moving through the forest without noise was an art form Lena had spent years perfecting. Step placement, weight distribution, breathing rhythm, it all mattered. She descended the slope in near silence, using the creek's burble to mask the small sounds she couldn't avoid. 50 meters from Walsh's position, she stopped. "Dr. Walsh," she called out, voice pitched to carry but not echo. "My name is Lena Cross. I'm the one who shot out Volkov's tires. I'm not here to hurt you." No response. "I know you're behind the rocks near the creek. I have a rifle, but it's slung on my back. I'm going to approach with my hands visible. Don't run. We need to talk." Still nothing. Lena took 3 steps forward, hands at shoulder height, moving into the open. "I said don't move!" Walsh had emerged from behind the boulder with a pistol, compact 9mm, held in a 2-handed grip that shook badly enough to be useless beyond 10 feet. "Easy," Lena said, stopping immediately. "I told you, I'm not the threat here." "You shot at us." "I shot at tires. Big difference." Lena kept her hands up, making herself as non-threatening as possible. "If I wanted you dead, Dr. Walsh, you'd be dead. I had the shot, didn't take it." Walsh's hands trembled harder. "Who are you?" "I told you, Lena Cross. I used to work for the same people you used to work for." "Used to?" "About 10 minutes ago, I disobeyed a direct order to kill you. So yeah, used to." Lena tilted her head slightly. "Which raises an interesting question. Why does the agency want you dead badly enough to activate a retired asset? The pistol wavered. You're really not here to kill me? Really not? Then why are you here? Initially, to stop you from buying stolen classified data from a Russian intelligence officer. But something about that narrative isn't sitting right. Lena took a careful step forward. So how about you tell me what's actually happening and we'll figure it out from there? Walsh's arms dropped slowly, the pistol pointing at the ground now instead of Lena's chest. Her face was pale, eyes red-rimmed from crying or exhaustion or both. They think I'm the leak, she said, voice cracking. They think I'm selling secrets, but I'm not. I'm trying to stop it. Stop what? The actual leak. The real traitor. Walsh wiped her face with her free hand. Someone inside DARPA has been selling research data for 18 months. High-level projects, weapons systems, AI applications, everything. I found evidence 3 weeks ago. Financial records, communication logs, patterns that didn't make sense unless someone was running an operation. Lena lowered her hand slowly. Let me guess. You reported it through proper channels. Of course I did. I filed reports, requested investigation, followed every procedure. Walsh laughed bitterly. 2 days later, my lab had an accident. Gas leak, they said. Building evacuated. And I got a message on my personal phone. No caller ID, just a voice telling me to forget what I'd found or they'd make sure the next accident wasn't so survivable. So you ran. I faked my death, had help from someone I trust, went underground. Walsh gestured vaguely toward the valley behind them. I've been trying to track the real traitor, gather proof, find someone in the system I could trust with what I'd learned. And Volkov is helping me. For money, yes, but helping. The data he stole from Boulder? It wasn't random. It was specifically chosen to draw out the buyer, the person inside DARPA who's been selling our research. I needed to know who it was. Lena's mind raced through the implications. Did it work? Did the real traitor make contact? Walsh nodded. Yesterday. Encrypted message. They wanted the Boulder data, offered payment, suggested a meet. But you met Volkov instead. We were planning the trap, working out how to... Walsh stopped, eyes widening. Oh no. What? The meet. The real meet with the traitor. It's tonight. Volkov was supposed to go in my place, wearing a wire, getting evidence we could use. What time? Walsh checked her watch with shaking hands. 1900 hours. That's only... She did the math, face going pale. 68 minutes. Where? Old mining facility? About 12 miles northwest of here. Lena felt pieces clicking together in her head, forming a picture she didn't like. And now Volkov is damaged, his security team is compromised, and you're exposed. Whoever the real traitor is, they'll know something went wrong. They'll either run or... Walsh trailed off. Or clean house, Lena finished. Eliminate witnesses, burn the evidence, disappear. They stood in silence for a moment, creek water burbling over rocks, wind moving through the aspens. Cole ordered me to kill you, Lena said quietly. Director-level authority, weapons free, no hesitation. I know Cole, Walsh said. He's been with the agency for 20 years. If he gave that order, either he's the traitor or he's been told you are and believes it. Or there's someone above him making the calls. Lena considered that. The organizational structure of intelligence agencies was deliberately compartmentalized. Need to know, limited access, chain of command that could be manipulated by whoever controlled information flow. Tell me about the evidence you found, she said. The financial records, communication logs. Where are they? Walsh tapped her jacket pocket. Flash drive. Encrypted. Everything I've gathered over 3 weeks. And Volkov knows you have it? Yes. We were going to use it to... Walsh stopped again, understanding dawning. He was the only person who knew I was alive. The only one who knew where I'd be today. And coincidentally, Lena said, this whole area has been crawling with agency assets trying to track him, almost like someone made sure we knew where he'd be. The trap became clear now, not for Volkov, but for Walsh. Draw her out of hiding, make contact with a Russian intelligence officer, create a scenario that looked exactly like treason, then send in an operative to eliminate the problem, clean, permanent, plausibly deniable. They set me up, Walsh whispered. Not Volkov. He's a mercenary, but he's playing it straight based on what you told me. Whoever's inside the agency, though, they used your investigation against you, fed Cole information that made you look guilty, activated me to do the wet work. Lena felt anger building in her chest, cold and sharp. We're both tools in someone else's game. So what do we do? Before Lena could answer, her radio, the one clipped to her vest, not the earpiece she'd destroyed, crackled with static. Then a voice she recognized, Ray Chen from the gun store. Cross, if you can hear this, you need to listen very carefully. Lena grabbed the radio. Ray, how are you on this frequency? That Fed who showed up at the store, the one in the suit, he came back 2 hours ago with friends. They've been asking questions about you, where you went, what you said, and they made it very clear we should forget you exist. That's standard protocol. I know standard protocol, Ray interrupted. This wasn't that. This was intimidation, the kind that makes people disappear. He paused. So I made some calls, guys I served with, contractors I trust, and we started asking our own questions because something felt wrong. Lena's grip tightened on the radio. What did you find? That operation you mentioned, Northern Border, winter extraction. I found Hendricks. You said his number was disconnected. His official number, yeah, but I had a backup contact. Took some doing, but I tracked him down. He's living in Montana now, under a different name, and he does not want to be found. But he remembered you. What did he say? That the extraction was compromised before it started. Someone fed intel to the Russians, said the whole thing was a setup to eliminate a team that knew too much about a classified project. Ray's voice dropped. He said the only reason you got them out alive was because you didn't follow the mission brief. You improvised. And that's the only reason any of them survived. Walsh was listening, her expression shifting from confusion to understanding. There's more, Ray continued. I did some digging on your recall, the helicopter, the extraction order, Director Cole. None of it follows normal activation protocols. The authorization codes are real, but the operational structure is wrong. It's like someone with high-level access created a parallel chain of command specifically for this mission. Meaning someone wanted me activated outside normal channels, Lena said. Exactly. Someone who knew you were good enough to do the job, but also knew you were out of the loop long enough that you wouldn't question the orders. Ray paused. They picked you because you were the perfect weapon. Effective, isolated, and disposable. The words hit like a physical blow. Who are you talking to? Walsh asked. Lena held up a hand. Ray, can you trace the authorization? Find out who initiated my recall? Already did. That's why I'm calling. The orders came from someone named Sarah Mitchell. The air left Lena's lungs. Sarah Mitchell. One of the 17 names supposedly compromised by Volkov's data theft. The woman whose photo the man in the suit had shown her. The embedded operative in Moscow who would supposedly be arrested if the data got out. Except she wasn't in Moscow. She was here, running operations, setting up kills. She's the traitor, Lena said aloud, pieces finally falling into place. She's the one selling DARPA research, and she's been using her position to eliminate anyone who gets close to discovering it. That's what my sources think, Ray confirmed. And Cross, she knows you didn't take the shot, which means she knows you're a problem now instead of a solution. How long do I have? Minutes, maybe. They were mobilizing assets when I made this call. I'm burning every bridge I have to warn you, so make it count. The radio crackled with interference, then went silent. Lena looked at Walsh. Give me the flash drive. What? The evidence you collected. I need it. Walsh hesitated, then pulled a small drive from her pocket and handed it over. Lena pocketed it, mind already running through tactical scenarios. That mining facility where the meet was supposed to happen, she said. How far? 12 miles. Northwest. Old access road. But it's rough terrain. Can you drive it in an hour? Maybe. Why? Because we're going to that meet, and we're going to catch Mitchell in the act. Walsh's eyes widened. That's suicide. She'll have backup, security. She's been planning this for 18 months, I know. Lena unslung the ballista, checking the action with automatic precision. But she's been planning for Volkov to show up, not me. And she definitely hasn't planned for the two people she tried to eliminate to walk in together with evidence of her treason. We can't take her alone. We're not alone. Lena pulled out her phone, the civilian one she'd kept turned off since the helicopter ride. Powered it on. We have friends. Who? The kind of friends who get scared when federal agents show up at their gun store and start threatening people. She dialed a number from memory. Ray? It's Cross again. I need a favor. 20 minutes later, Walsh's Range Rover was tearing up the Forest Service road with Lena riding passenger, the ballista across her lap, and a plan that had maybe 30% chance of success. This is insane, Walsh said for the third time, white-knuckling the steering wheel as the vehicle bounced over ruts and rocks. Probably, Lena agreed, but it's the only play we have. Mitchell expects us dead or running. She doesn't expect us showing up at her door with evidence and witnesses. Witnesses? Ray Chen and his contractor friends. They're mobilizing now. Not officially, nobody can know they're there, but they'll have eyes on the facility, long-range observation. If this goes wrong, they'll document what happens. And if we die, then at least someone knows the truth. Walsh laughed, high and slightly hysterical. That's not comforting. Wasn't meant to be. The mining facility appeared through the trees at 1847 hours. Old industrial buildings clustered around the entrance to a sealed mine shaft, surrounded by rusted chain-link fence and decades of neglect. A single vehicle sat in the clearing, black sedan, government plates. She's here, Walsh whispered. Of course she is. Mitchell's thorough. She wouldn't send someone else to handle this. Lena studied the facility through her scope. Park behind that old processing building. We'll approach on foot. Walsh did as instructed, killing the engine. The silence that followed was heavy with tension and fear and the weight of very bad decisions. Last chance to back out, Lena said. She tried to kill me, tried to frame me as a traitor, destroyed my life. Walsh's hands were steady now, anger burning away the fear. I'm seeing this through. They exited the vehicle quietly. Lena moved to the trunk, opened a case she'd noticed earlier. Basic emergency supplies, including a tire iron and road flares. Can you use that pistol? She asked Walsh. I've had training, never fired it in anger. Might change tonight. Lena handed her 2 extra magazines from her own kit. Stay behind me. Follow my lead. If shooting starts, find cover and stay in it. Understand? Walsh nodded. They moved through the facility like ghosts, Lena in front, rifle at low ready, Walsh following close behind. The buildings were industrial graveyards, full of rusted equipment and broken windows, perfect for ambush, which meant perfect for being ambushed. At 1856 hours, they reached the main office building. Light showed through the windows. Someone inside, waiting. Lena keyed her civilian phone, sent a single text to Ray. In position. The response came back immediately. We have you. 3 thermals in the building, 2 more in vehicles on the perimeter. 5 hostiles minimum. Probably more. Change of plans, Lena whispered to Walsh. We're not going in quiet. What? Instead of answering, Lena raised the ballista and fired 2 shots in rapid succession, both rounds hitting the front tires of the black sedan. The explosions echoed through the facility like thunder. Immediately, the building erupted with activity, shouting, footsteps, doors slamming. Lena and Walsh were already moving, circling around to the north side of the building where an old loading dock provided cover. The front door burst open and 2 men emerged, security contractors carrying rifles, scanning for threats. Show yourselves, one of them shouted. We have authorization to use lethal force. So do I, Lena called back from the darkness. And I'm better at it than you are. A woman's voice cut through the night. Stand down, everyone stand down. Sarah Mitchell. She emerged from the building slowly, hands visible, professional business attire completely out of place in this industrial wasteland. Lena Cross, she said, I knew you'd be a problem. That's why I specifically requested you for the operation. Good operators are predictable. They follow orders. Great operators think too much. Lena stepped into the light, rifle pointed at Mitchell's center mass. You used me. I used everyone. That's what intelligence work is. Using people's skills and limitations to achieve objectives they don't understand. Mitchell's smile was cold. You were supposed to kill Walsh and Volkov, eliminating 2 problems at once. Clean, simple. Except I didn't. No. You had a conscience at the worst possible moment. Mitchell sighed. Such a waste. You were perfect for this. Isolated, desperate for validation, eager to prove you still had value. A tool that thought it was a person. The words hit harder than Lena wanted to admit. Walsh stepped up beside her, pistol raised with both hands. I have evidence. Financial records. Communication logs. Everything you've sold over the last 18 months. Had evidence, Mitchell corrected. Had. Past tense. Because whatever's on that flash drive, it's encrypted with an algorithm that deletes itself if the wrong person tries to access it. I've been monitoring for decryption attempts. None have succeeded. We have copies, Walsh said, but her voice wavered. No, you don't. You had one drive, one backup, and you're holding it. Mitchell gestured to her security team. Which makes this very simple. Take them both. Recover the drive. Clean up the mess. The contractors started moving forward. Lena's finger tightened on the trigger. Then the night erupted with light. Flares shot into the air from 3 different positions around the facility. Ray Chen and his contractor friends, creating illumination and chaos exactly as Lena had asked. The security team hesitated, confused, scanning for the source. In that moment of distraction, Lena moved. She crossed the distance to the nearest contractor in 3 steps, used the rifle stock to break his knee. The crack was audible. Then stripped his weapon as he fell. One smooth motion, rifle slung, his AR-15 acquired, safety off, first round chambered. 2 seconds. Maybe 3. She put 2 rounds into the second contractor's body armor, center mass, controlled pair. He went down hard, wind knocked out, incapacitated, but alive. The third man raised his weapon. Lena was faster. Single shot, right shoulder. He dropped the rifle, stumbling back against the building. Silence fell except for groaning and the hiss of burning flares. Mitchell hadn't moved, hadn't run. Just stood there watching with the expression of someone playing chess against a better opponent. Impressive, she said, but there are more coming. I have assets en route. You can't win this. I don't need to win, Lena said, breathing hard, adrenaline singing through her veins. I just need to survive long enough for the truth to get out. What truth? You're a rogue operative who assaulted federal contractors. I'm a decorated intelligence officer. Who do you think they'll believe? Them. Lena gestured to the darkness where Ray and his team were positioned. 3 former contractors with cameras and long-range observation equipment. They've been recording everything, this conversation, your security team, all of it. For the first time, Mitchell's expression cracked. You're bluffing. Am I? Lena pulled out her phone, showed the screen, live stream active, multiple viewers, recording in progress. Say hello to the internet, Director Mitchell. Or should I say former director, because I'm pretty sure admitting to using federal assets for personal operations is grounds for termination, among other charges. Mitchell's hand moved toward her jacket. Don't, Walsh said, pistol steady now. I might not be Ghost, but at this range even I can't miss. Mitchell froze. Then slowly she smiled. The expression of someone who'd lost this battle but was already planning the next war. You have no idea what you've done, she said quietly. The programs I was protecting. The research that needed to stay compartmentalized. You think I was doing this for money? Does it matter? Lena asked. It will. When you realize the people I was selling to were actually... The gunshot came from nowhere. High-velocity round. Suppressed. Professional. Mitchell's head snapped back and she dropped like a puppet with cut strings. Lena hit the ground immediately, pulling Walsh down with her, scanning for the shooter. Nothing. Just darkness and the dying light of flares and Mitchell's body bleeding out on the concrete. Sniper! One of the wounded contractors screamed. We've got a... Another shot. The contractor went silent. Lena's radio crackled. Cross, this is Ray. We didn't see that shot. Repeat, that did not come from us. You've got someone else in play. Copy, Lena whispered, belly crawling toward cover, Walsh right behind her. A third shot kicked up concrete inches from where Walsh's head had been. They made it behind a concrete barrier just as a 4th round punched through the spot they'd vacated. Someone's cleaning house, Walsh gasped. Killing witnesses. Us included. Lena's mind raced. Professional sniper. Suppressed weapon. Unknown position. Multiple targets eliminated in seconds. This wasn't Mitchell's backup. This was someone else's solution to the problem. Someone who'd been watching, waiting, making sure no one walked away with answers. She keyed the radio. "Ray, extract now. Get out of there. Tell your people to scatter and disappear. This is bigger than we thought." "What about you?" "We're leaving. Different direction. Don't follow. Don't look back. Forget you saw any of this." "Crossed out. That's an order. Move." Lena grabbed Walsh's arm and they ran. Not toward the vehicles, not toward the access road, but into the forest where headlights and thermals had a harder time finding targets. Behind them, the facility erupted with gunfire as whoever was cleaning house finished the job. They ran until their lungs burned and their legs screamed and the sound of shooting faded into the distance. Finally, they collapsed in a ravine beside a frozen stream, gasping for air. "What just happened?" Walsh managed between breaths. "Someone just erased the evidence," Lena said. "Mitchell. Her security team. Probably would have gotten us too if we'd stayed." "But who?" "Someone with resources. Someone who knew about Mitchell's operation and decided the exposure risk was too high." Lena checked the flash drive in her pocket. Still there, still intact. "We're the only ones left who know the truth. So what do we do?" Lena looked at the woman beside her, scientist turned fugitive, scared and exhausted and way out of her depth. Then she looked up at the stars appearing between the trees, cold and distant, and utterly indifferent to the small dramas playing out below. "We disappear," she said finally. "Both of us. New identities, new lives. We take this evidence and we bury it so deep that even if they find us, they'll never find it. And we wait." "Wait for what?" "For the right moment, the right person. Someone we can trust with what we know." Lena stood, offering Walsh a hand up. "Until then, we're ghosts. Both of us." Walsh took the offered hand and stood. They walked into the darkness together, leaving behind the burning facility and the dead and the unanswered questions. Behind them, the mountains kept their secrets. And somewhere in the night, a sniper packed up their rifle and disappeared. Mission complete. Another loose end tied off in a war that had no names and left no traces. The only evidence that any of it had happened was a live stream that mysteriously corrupted before uploading 3 contractors who suddenly developed amnesia about that night, and 2 women who ceased to exist in any official database. Ghost had earned her name again, but this time she wasn't alone. They walked for 3 hours through forests so dark that Lena navigated by memory and instinct more than sight. Walsh stumbled frequently, her civilian shoes inadequate for the terrain, but she didn't complain. Just kept moving, one foot in front of the other, breathing hard in the thin mountain air. At 2200 hours, they reached an old fire lookout tower, abandoned decades ago, wooden structure half collapsed but still offering shelter from the wind that had picked up as temperature dropped. "We stop here," Lena said, already scanning the surroundings for threat indicators. Nothing but trees and darkness and the distant sound of something moving through underbrush. Deer, probably. Maybe elk. Walsh collapsed against the tower's base, sliding down until she sat on the cold ground. "I can't. I need to rest." 5 minutes. Then we keep moving. "Why? Mitchell's dead. Her team is dead. Nobody's chasing us." "You don't know that." Lena pulled out her phone, battery at 12%, no signal this deep in the wilderness. She powered it down to conserve charge. Whoever took that shot, they're professional. And professionals don't leave jobs half-finished. "So we just keep running forever?" "Until I figure out our next move, yes." Walsh laughed, bitter, exhausted. "You don't have a plan. You're making this up as you go." "Welcome to field operations. It's mostly improvisation and hoping you don't die." Lena sat down across from her, rifle across her lap, still watching the tree line. "But yeah, I'm working on something." "Care to share?" "Not yet." They sat in silence for a moment. Above them, stars blazed in the clear mountain sky. No light pollution this far from civilization, just the universe showing off. "Why did you help me?" Walsh asked suddenly. "Back at the valley. You could have taken the shot, followed orders, gone back to your life." "I don't have a life to go back to. Not anymore." "You know what I mean." Lena was quiet for a long moment, thinking about the question beneath the question. Why risk everything for a stranger? Why choose conscience over orders? "There was an operation," she said finally, 4 years ago, Syria. We had intelligence on a high-value target, chemical weapons facility, supposedly. My team was sent in for reconnaissance and target designation. Airstrike was already planned, just waiting for our confirmation. Walsh listened, barely breathing. We got to the facility, spent 2 days observing, and something felt wrong. The security was too light. The personnel movement didn't match chemical weapons protocols. I told my handler we needed more time to verify. What did they say? That the intelligence was solid, that the strike window was closing, that I needed to trust the system and confirm the target. Lena's hands tightened on the rifle. So I did. I followed orders, painted the target with the laser designator, and called in the coordinates. What happened? It wasn't a weapons facility. It was a refugee shelter, civilians hiding from the war, women and children mostly. Lena's voice stayed level, emotionless, the way it got when she talked about things that would break her if she let them. The building was demolished. 43 people dead, 0 combatants, just people who were scared and hiding and trusted that building to keep them safe. Walsh's hand moved to her mouth. The official report said it was collateral damage from a legitimate military target. That civilian deaths were regrettable but unavoidable in modern warfare. They gave me a commendation for successful mission completion. Lena looked up at the stars. I requested immediate discharge. They denied it, said I was too valuable. So I went rogue for 3 months until they finally agreed to let me retire if I promised to stay available for recall. The northern border operation, Walsh said quietly. That was your recall. Yeah, and just like Syria, the intelligence was wrong. The mission was compromised. The only difference was that time I didn't follow the plan. I trusted my instincts instead of the system. Lena met Walsh's eyes. So when Cole ordered me to kill you, and I saw your face through that scope, scared, not guilty, I knew what choice I had to make. You couldn't save those people in Syria, so you saved me instead. Something like that. Walsh was quiet for a moment, processing. Then, the flash drive. What's actually on it? You tell me. You're the one who encrypted it. I know what files are there. Financial records, communication logs, transaction histories, but I don't know what it all means. I'm a scientist, not an analyst. I found patterns that looked wrong and documented them, but she shrugged helplessly. I don't know how to use it, how to prove Mitchell was dirty without also burning 17 legitimate operatives who had nothing to do with her operation. Lena thought about that. The flash drive in her pocket suddenly felt heavier. Mitchell said something before she died, Walsh continued, about the people she was selling to. She started to say they were actually. Then the shot came. Actually what? I don't know, but it bothered her that we didn't understand. Lena stood, stretching cramped muscles. Which means the narrative we've been operating under is incomplete. Mitchell was selling secrets, yes, but maybe not to who we think, and maybe not for the reasons we assumed. You think she was running a sanctioned operation? I think intelligence work is built on layers of lies, and sometimes the people telling the lies forget which layer they're on. Lena offered Walsh a hand up. Come on, we've rested long enough. They walked for another hour, descending now, following a game trail that would eventually intersect with a Forest Service road. Lena's plan, such as it was, required reaching civilization. Specifically, reaching a town called Fairplay, about 20 miles east, where she knew a man who asked no questions and had access to resources that didn't appear on any official manifests. Old habits, old contacts, the kind of network you built during years of classified work and never fully left behind. At 23:47 hours, Walsh stopped walking. I can't go any further, she said, voice breaking. My feet are bleeding. I'm exhausted. I can't. Lena turned back, evaluating. Walsh was right. She'd been running on adrenaline for hours, and the crash was hitting hard. Pushing her further would just slow them down or cause injury. Okay, Lena said. We make camp. Find somewhere defensible. Move again at first light. They located a small depression between two boulders. Not ideal, but it provided cover from three sides and concealment from above. Lena gathered pine boughs for insulation, helped Walsh settle in, gave her the emergency blanket from her tactical pack. Try to sleep, Lena said. I'll keep watch. What about you? I've gone longer without sleep. I'm fine. That was a lie, but Walsh didn't need to know that. The truth was, Lena's body was screaming. Old injuries making themselves known, muscles pushed past reasonable limits, the kind of exhaustion that came from operating in combat mode for extended periods. But operators didn't get to be tired, not when people were counting on them. Walsh fell asleep within minutes, the deep, immediate unconsciousness of someone whose body had simply given up negotiating with consciousness. Her breathing evened out, occasionally hitching with small sounds that might have been dreams, or might have been fear manifesting in sleep. Lena sat with her back against stone, rifle across her knees, watching the darkness. Alone with her thoughts, always a dangerous place to be. She thought about the gun store, Derek and Marcus and Ray, and all of them laughing when she'd walked in. The assumption that she was lost, weak, someone to be dismissed. She thought about how satisfying it had been to prove them wrong. And then she thought about how empty that satisfaction had felt afterward. Because what had she proven, really? That she could lift a rifle one-handed? That she could make an impossible shot? That she had skills they'd never develop and experiences they'd never understand? So what? The people in Syria were still dead. The mission in the north had still been compromised. Mitchell had still used her like a weapon and very nearly succeeded in making her a murderer. Being dangerous didn't make you right. It just made you dangerous. Somewhere around 200 hours, Lena heard movement in the trees. Careful, deliberate, not animal. She brought the rifle up silently, finger on the trigger, watching for targets. A figure emerged from the darkness, hands visible and empty. "Don't shoot," Ray Chen said quietly. "It's me." Lena's finger stayed on the trigger. "How did you find us?" "I'm a contractor. Tracking is what I do." He moved slowly into the small clearing, keeping his hands where she could see them. "I brought supplies, water, food, first aid. I told you to disappear." "Yeah, well, I'm bad at following orders, personality flaw." He lowered himself to the ground, moving with the careful precision of someone who knew exactly how close he was to getting shot. "My team scattered like you said, deleted footage, wiped drives. We were never there. But you came back. Because you saved my life." Lena blinked. "I did what?" "The sniper. After Mitchell went down, he started working through the contractors. Got 2 of them before we bugged out. If you hadn't called the extraction when you did, we'd all be dead." Ray pulled a backpack off his shoulder, set it down carefully. "So yeah, I figured I owed you. Tracked your trail, brought supplies, came alone. You're compromising your safety by being here." "Story of my life," he gestured to Walsh's sleeping form. "She okay?" "Physically, yes. Everything else," Lena shrugged. "She's a scientist who got caught up in spy games. She'll process it or she won't." "And you?" "I've been here before. Different mountains, same problems." Ray was quiet for a moment, then, "I called Torres. The real Torres, not the disconnected number. Took some doing, but I tracked him down again, told him what happened. He said to tell you something." "What?" "That the northern extraction, the reason it worked, the reason any of them survived, wasn't just because you were good, it was because you gave a damn. You treated them like people worth saving instead of objectives worth completing." Ray met her eyes. "He said most operators would have followed the brief and gotten everyone killed, but you broke protocol and saved lives. 43 people in Syria would disagree with that assessment. That wasn't your fault. You followed orders that were built on bad intelligence. Doesn't make them less dead." "No, but it makes you less responsible." Ray leaned forward slightly. "You're carrying weight that isn't yours to carry, Cross. You're blaming yourself for trusting a system that lied to you. That's not guilt. That's trauma." Lena looked away, jaw tight. "Why are you really here, Ray?" "Because I saw something in that gun store, in you. The way you handled yourself. The precision, the control." He paused. "But also the sadness, the weight. I've seen that look before. In guys coming back from deployment, in contractors who'd done too many operations, in people who'd traded pieces of themselves for mission success until they forgot what was trade and what was theft." "Profound. You practiced that speech?" "Little bit, yeah." He smiled, but it faded quickly. "Point is, you don't have to do this alone, whatever this is. Whatever you're planning, I can help." "You can help by forgetting you saw me." "Already tried that. Didn't stick." Ray pulled something from his jacket. A satellite phone. Military grade. Encrypted. Take this. It's clean. Untraceable. If you need extraction, resources, backup, call this number. He placed it on the ground between them. No questions, no obligations, just insurance. Lena stared at the phone. Why? She asked quietly. Because 3 years ago, my best friend ate his service weapon in a motel room in Phoenix. Depression, PTSD, couldn't adjust to civilian life, couldn't find help that understood what he'd been through. Ray's voice went rough. And I didn't see the signs, didn't reach out, just assumed he was fine because he said he was fine. I'm not suicidal. I know, but you're isolated, and isolation kills just as dead, it just takes longer. He stood, brushing dirt from his pants. So take the phone. Use it or don't. But know that someone out here gives a damn whether you make it through this. He turned to leave. Ray? Lena called quietly. He stopped. Thank you. He nodded once and disappeared into the darkness, moving with the quiet efficiency of someone who'd spent years learning to be invisible. Lena picked up the satellite phone, turned it over in her hands. The weight was familiar, same model she'd used in Syria, in Afghanistan, and a dozen other places where regular communication infrastructure didn't exist or couldn't be trusted. She powered it on. Full battery. Single number programmed into the directory. Then she powered it back off and tucked it into her vest. Insurance, like Ray said. At 0530 hours, as dawn started painting the eastern sky in shades of gray, Walsh stirred and woke. Did I hear voices? She asked, groggy. No, just me talking to myself, bad habit. Walsh sat up, wincing as movement reminded her of every bruise and strain from the previous night. What's the plan? We walk to Fairplay. About 6 hours if we maintain pace. There's someone there who can help us disappear properly. Who? Better if you don't know names. Plausible deniability. They ate protein bars from Ray's supply drop and drank water that tasted like plastic, but was safe. As they prepared to move, Walsh paused, looking at Lena with an expression that was hard to read. What you told me last night. About Syria. About the 43 people. Walsh's voice was careful. You know that wasn't your fault, right? You followed the intelligence you were given. You trusted the system. The system was wrong. The system is always wrong sometimes. That's why we need people in it who care enough to question. Who have the courage to say no when orders don't match reality? Walsh shouldered her small pack. You saved me because you questioned, because you saw something wrong and chose differently. That matters. Does it? Yeah, it does. They started walking. The descent was easier than the climb had been, gravity helping, terrain more forgiving, morning light making obstacles visible instead of lurking threats. They made good time, covering ground quickly, and by 1100 hours they'd reached the outskirts of Fairplay. Small town. Maybe 500 people. The kind of place where strangers got noticed but not necessarily reported if they minded their own business. Lena led them to a mechanic shop on the edge of town. Single building, hand-painted sign that said Morrison's Automotive. Cars in various states of repair scattered across the lot. A man emerged from the garage bay, wiping grease-stained hands on a rag. Late 50s, gray beard, eyes that had seen things and decided not to talk about them. Help you ladies? He asked. I'm looking for Morrison, Lena said. You found him. Frank Morrison, former Marine, served in Fallujah. The man's expression shifted, subtle, but there. Who's asking? Someone who needs the kind of help the Marines teach you to provide. No questions, cash payment, discreet service. Morrison studied her for a long moment. Then his eyes flicked to Walsh, back to Lena, taking in the tactical gear, the weapons, the exhaustion. Inside, he said quietly. The office was small. Cluttered desk, filing cabinets, calendar from 2019 still hanging on the wall. Morrison closed the door, drew the blinds, and turned to face them. You're running from something, he said. Not a question. Someone, Lena corrected. Possibly multiple someones. We need transportation that can't be traced, new identification that'll pass casual inspection, and supplies for 2 weeks off-grid. That's asking a lot. I know, which is why I'm prepared to pay. Lena pulled out a credit card, one of her civilian ones, still active. This account has $40,000. You can have all of it. Morrison didn't reach for the card. Money's not the issue. The issue is whether helping you puts my family at risk. Fair question. Honest answer? I don't know. We're being hunted by people with significant resources. But we're also ghosts right now. Nobody knows we're here. If you help us disappear properly, the trail ends with you, and we become someone else's problem. And if the people hunting you come asking questions, tell them we stole a vehicle at gunpoint, that we threatened your family, that you had no choice. They'll believe you because it fits their narrative of us as dangerous rogues. Morrison walked to his desk, opened a drawer, and pulled out a bottle of whiskey and 2 glasses. Poured 3 fingers in each, handed one to Lena. I lost my son in Afghanistan, he said quietly. I ED outside Kandahar. He was 19, Marines, like his old man. He drank the whiskey in one swallow. The day we got the notification, 2 officers showed up in dress blues and told us it was a training accident, that he died quickly, that his sacrifice mattered. Lena waited. 3 years later, I got a letter, anonymous, postmarked from Virginia. It had details about what really happened, how the mission was compromised, how intelligence had been faulty, how my son and 4 other Marines died because someone up the chain made decisions based on politics instead of reality. Morrison's hand tightened on the glass. The system failed him, just like it's probably failing you. I'm sorry about your son. Don't be sorry. Just tell me one thing. Are you the bad guys? Lena thought about that, about Syria and the northern border and Mitchell and all the gray areas she'd operated in. I don't know, she said honestly. I've done things I'm not proud of, followed orders that killed innocent people. But right now in this specific situation, I think we're trying to do the right thing, trying to expose corruption and protect people who don't deserve to be caught in the crossfire. Morrison poured another drink. Didn't offer this one to anyone, just held it. Okay, he said finally, I'll help you. Not because I trust the system or believe in causes, but because you gave me an honest answer instead of a convenient lie. He drained the glass. Give me 4 hours. I'll have a vehicle ready. Older model, no GPS, clean title. I'll set you up with supplies, basic documentation, and a route that avoids major highways. Thank you. Don't thank me. Just survive long enough to make whatever you're doing matter. Those 4 hours were the longest of Lena's life. Sitting in Morrison's office, listening to Walsh sleep on the ancient couch, watching the clock tick forward while wondering if federal assets were closing in. At 1500 hours, Morrison returned with keys. 1998 Chevy Suburban, registration under a dead-end LLC. I keep for situations like this. Tanks full, supplies in the back. He handed over 2 manila envelopes, driver's licenses, passports, social security cards. They'll pass superficial checks, but don't push your luck with deep background searches. Lena opened one envelope. The license showed her face, but a different name. Sarah Collins, born in Ohio, clean history. Sarah? She asked. Morrison shrugged. Had the template already made. Figured I'd use it eventually. The bitter irony wasn't lost on Lena. She was now using the name of the person who'd tried to have her killed. But it would work. The route? Walsh asked. Head south on 285, then east on 50. Avoid Denver. Stick to small towns. I marked safe stops on this map. Places where the owners don't ask questions and the security cameras don't work. He handed over a paper map, marked with highlighter. Get somewhere far away and stay there. Build a new life. They loaded into the Suburban. Walsh in the passenger seat, supplies and weapons in the back, the weight of new identities in their pockets. As Lena started the engine, Morrison leaned in the driver's window. One more thing, he said. That flash drive you're carrying, whatever's on it, be careful who you show it to. Information that valuable doesn't just disappear because the person who collected it dies. Someone will come looking. Maybe not today. Maybe not for months. But eventually. I know. Do you? Morrison's expression was grave. Because, from where I'm standing, you look like someone who's been running on instinct for the last 24 hours. Reacting instead of planning. That works in combat. But in intelligence work, that gets you killed. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting you find someone smarter than you to analyze that data. Someone who understands the game at a higher level. Because whatever Mitchell was doing, whatever she was trying to tell you before she died, that's the key to understanding who you're really running from. Lena thought about that. You know someone like that? Morrison smiled. I might, but it'll cost you. I'm out of money. Not money, a favor. Future consideration. The kind of debt that comes due when you least expect it. Lena met his eyes. Saw the calculation there, the understanding that information was currency and debts were leverage. Okay, she said. Deal. Morrison pulled out his phone, sent a text message, waited. 2 minutes later, a response came through. There's a woman in Santa Fe, former NSA analyst, retired after some kind of scandal. She's paranoid, brilliant, and has no love for the intelligence community. He showed Lena the phone, address, contact protocol, verification codes. Tell her Morrison sent you. Tell her you have data that needs expert analysis and you're willing to trade information for discretion. What kind of information? Whatever she asks for, within reason. Morrison pocketed the phone. Her name is Dr. Elena Vasquez. And Cross? Don't lie to her. She's better at spotting deception than anyone I've ever met. They drove south as evening settled across the mountains, leaving Fairplay and Morrison and the last connection to Lena's old life behind. Walsh fell asleep again within an hour, exhaustion finally winning the battle against fear. Lena drove through the darkness, hands steady on the wheel, mind processing everything that had happened in the last 36 hours. She'd gone from retired operative to active asset to rogue fugitive in less than 2 days. She'd killed people, saved people, made enemies and uncertain allies. And somewhere out there, someone with a sniper rifle and unclear motivations had cleaned up Mitchell's operation with professional efficiency. The question was, who? And more importantly, were they finished or just getting started? At 2200 hours, Lena's satellite phone, the one Ray had given her, buzzed with an incoming text. Unknown number. The message read, "We need to talk, not about killing you, about hiring you. Name your price. V. Volkov." The Russian intelligence officer she'd helped escape by shooting out his tires. Lena stared at the message for a long moment, then showed it to Walsh, who'd woken when the phone buzzed. Is he serious? Walsh asked. With Volkov? Always hard to tell. Lena typed a response. Why would I work for you? The reply came immediately. Because I know who killed Mitchell. Because I know what she was really selling. And because what you think happened tonight is only the beginning of a much larger operation. Meet me. Or don't. But if you want answers instead of just running, you know where to find me. An address followed. Coordinates in New Mexico, not far from Santa Fe. It's a trap, Walsh said. Probably. So we ignore it. Lena thought about Morrison's advice. About finding someone smarter to analyze the situation. About the fact that they were operating with incomplete information in a game where not knowing the rules got you killed. Or, she said slowly, we spring the trap on purpose, with preparation, with backup, with a plan that assumes betrayal and plans for it. That's insane. Yeah, Lena started the engine again, but so is running blind for the rest of our lives. She typed a response. 48 hours. I'll contact you with meet location and terms. You follow my protocol or we don't meet. Volkov's response, acceptable. Looking forward to it, Ghost. Lena put the phone away and drove towards Santa Fe, where a former NSA analyst might have answers, or might have more questions, or might be another piece of a puzzle that kept growing more complex with every move. Beside her, Walsh stared out the window at the darkness rushing past. You know this could get us both killed, she said quietly. Yeah. And you're doing it anyway. Yeah. Why? Lena thought about the gun store. About the laughter when she'd walked in, about proving herself to men who didn't matter. Then she thought about Syria, about following orders, about trusting a system that had betrayed that trust. Because I'm tired of being used, she said finally, tired of being a tool for people who don't respect the damage they're doing. Mitchell used me, Cole used me. The whole system uses people like us and discards us when we're no longer convenient. So what's the alternative? We use them back. We take the information they think is theirs. We find the truth they're trying to hide. And we make sure that whatever happens next, it happens on our terms, not theirs. Walsh was quiet for a long moment. Then, okay. I'm in. You sure? No, but I'm tired of running too, so let's do something worth the fear. They drove through the night toward Santa Fe, toward answers or more questions, toward confrontation or revelation. And somewhere behind them, the mountains kept their secrets. But not forever. Because Ghost was done being haunted by the past. Now she was hunting the future. Santa Fe appeared through the morning haze like a mirage. Adobe buildings the color of dried blood, narrow streets that predated automobiles. The kind of place where history sat heavy on every corner. Lena drove through the downtown area slowly, checking mirrors, watching for tails, old instincts sharp despite exhaustion. What are we looking for? Walsh asked, awake now, scanning the buildings with nervous energy. A bookstore, called The Cipher, used to be owned by a retired cryptographer. If Morrison's intel is current, Vasquez works there now. They found it on a side street, small storefront wedged between a gallery and a coffee shop. Hand-painted sign, faded but legible. Lena parked 3 blocks away, approached on foot, rifle left in the vehicle but the Glock under her jacket within easy reach. The bookstore smelled like old paper and coffee. Shelves lined every wall, packed tight with volumes that looked more academic than recreational. Mathematics, cryptography, signal processing, computer science. A woman sat behind the counter reading a book on quantum encryption. Late 40s, dark hair shot through with gray, reading glasses perched on her nose. She looked up as they entered. "We're closed," she said. "Your sign says open." "My sign is wrong." She went back to reading. Lena approached the counter. "Morrison sent us." The woman's eyes flicked up again, sharper this time, evaluating. "Frank Morrison? Former Marine. Runs an auto shop in Fairplay, lost his son in Afghanistan. That could be public information." "Could be. Except Morrison told me to tell you he still has the watch. The one you gave him in Kabul when you were both working contract jobs that officially didn't exist." The woman closed her book carefully. "How is Frank?" "Surviving, like the rest of us." "And what is Frank's recommendation by you?" "Hopefully your expertise." Lena pulled out the flash drive, set it on the counter. "I have data that needs analysis, professional-grade encryption, classified source material, potentially connected to an 18-month intelligence operation." "And you are?" "Someone who used to have a name. Now I'm just someone trying not to die." The woman, Vasquez presumably, picked up the drive, examined it without touching the USB connector. "This is DARPA-grade hardware. Where did you get it?" "From someone who stole it from someone who was selling secrets to foreign interests. Or domestic interests, or..." Lena shrugged. "That's where I need your help. I don't know what's on it. I don't know who the real players are. I just know people are dying to keep it secret." Vasquez looked at Walsh. "And you?" "Dr. Catherine Walsh. I created the encryption on that drive. I also faked my death 3 weeks ago to avoid being killed by the people I worked for." Walsh's voice was steadier now, anger replacing fear. "I documented evidence of treason. Someone tried to have me executed for it. Now I'd really like to know what I almost died for." Vasquez studied them both for a long moment. Then she flipped the sign on the door to closed, locked it, and gestured toward the back room. "Follow me." The back room was exactly what Lena expected. Computers, monitors, equipment that looked civilian, but probably cost 6 figures, the kind of setup intelligence analysts dreamed about. Vasquez settled into a chair, plugged in the drive, and her fingers moved across the keyboard with practiced speed. "Talk while I work," she said. "Tell me everything. Don't leave out details." So Lena told her. The gun store, the recall, Mitchell, Volkov, the mining facility, the sniper. All of it spilling out in chronological order while Vasquez's fingers never stopped moving, code scrolling across multiple screens. "The encryption is good," Vasquez said when Lena finished. "Multi-layer, rotating keys, self-destructing subroutines if improper access is attempted. This is professional work." "Can you break it?" Walsh asked. "I don't need to break it. You created it. You know the back door." Vasquez spun her chair around. "Don't you?" Walsh hesitated. "There is a... Yes, but using it requires biometric verification. My fingerprint specifically." "Then give it to me." Walsh placed her finger on a scanner Vasquez produced from a drawer. The screen flashed green. Access granted. Files began appearing, spreadsheets, communication logs, transaction records. thousands of pages of data organized with scientific precision. Vasquez scrolled through it, speed reading, occasionally stopping to examine specific entries. Her expression never changed, but Lena noticed her posture shifting, subtle tension, the body language of someone discovering something unexpected. "Well?" Lena asked after 10 minutes of silence. "This is interesting." Vasquez pulled up a spreadsheet, highlighted specific entries. "Dr. Walsh, you documented financial transactions you thought were evidence of espionage, correct?" "Yes." "Wire transfers, cryptocurrency movements, payments that didn't match any authorized budget." "And you assumed these payments were going to foreign intelligence services?" "That's what the pattern suggested. Except they weren't." Vasquez highlighted another section. "These accounts, the ones receiving the payments, they're not Russian or Chinese or any foreign entity. They're domestic. Specifically, they're black budget accounts controlled by a division of the CIA that officially doesn't exist." Silence filled the room. "I don't understand," Walsh said. "Mitchell wasn't selling secrets to enemies. She was selling them to a different part of her own government." Vasquez kept scrolling. "Look at the communication logs. The buyers she was meeting, code names, encrypted protocols, but the routing data shows domestic servers, Quantico, Langley, Fort Meade." Lena felt something cold settle in her stomach. She was running an internal operation. More than that, she was running a consolidation protocol. Vasquez pulled up another file, organizational charts, project names, budget allocations. Over the last 18 months, multiple classified research projects across different agencies were being funneled to a single control point. DARPA projects going to CIA oversight, NSA capabilities being transferred to military command, all of it reorganized under a structure that doesn't appear in any official documentation. "Why?" Walsh's voice was barely a whisper. "Because someone is building a shadow intelligence apparatus, taking the most powerful tools from different agencies and consolidating them under singular control." Vasquez met their eyes. "Mitchell wasn't a traitor. She was a facilitator. And whoever killed her did it because this operation was about to be exposed." "But who benefits?" Lena asked. "Who has the authority to restructure intelligence operations across multiple agencies?" Vasquez typed rapidly, pulling up more files. "That's the question, isn't it? And according to these logs, there's only one person with clearance high enough, budget access deep enough, and political protection strong enough to pull this off." She turned the monitor so they could see. A name appeared. Admiral James Hawthorne, Director of National Intelligence, presidential appointee, the highest-ranking intelligence officer in the United States. "No," Walsh said. "That's impossible. Hawthorne has been DNI for 6 years. He's been investigated, confirmed, vetted at the highest levels, which makes him perfect for this." Vasquez pulled up more data. "Look at the timeline. Every major consolidation move correlates with a crisis that gave him expanded authority. Terrorist attack, emergency powers, foreign interference, enhanced surveillance, each crisis used to justify taking more control, more authority, more power." "You're saying he created the crises," Lena said. "I'm saying the data suggests someone with his access could have influenced events to justify his power grabs. Whether that's him specifically or someone using his authority," Vasquez shrugged. "That's above my analytical pay grade." Lena's mind raced. Mitchell said something before she died about the people she was selling to being actually. Then she was shot. What if she was trying to say they were actually on the same side? That the whole narrative of foreign espionage was a cover for domestic reorganization? Then everyone involved, you, me, Walsh, Volkov, we're all just pawns in a much larger game. Vasquez closed the files. And the only way to stop it is to expose it publicly, burn the whole operation into the open where it can't hide. "How?" Walsh asked. "Release the data. Give it to journalists. Multiple sources simultaneously so it can't be suppressed. Let the world see what's been happening in the shadows." Lena thought about that, about consequences, about the 17 operatives whose names were supposedly on Mitchell's stolen data, people who'd be burned, exposed, endangered if this went public. "What about collateral damage?" she asked. "Innocent people caught in the blast radius?" Vasquez's expression softened slightly. "There's always collateral damage. The question is whether the damage of exposure is greater than the damage of continued secrecy. And looking at this data, Looking at what Hawthorne is building, she gestured to the screens. If this consolidation completes, if one person controls this much intelligence capability with this little oversight, the potential for abuse is unlimited. Domestic surveillance, political targeting, elimination of opposition. You're describing a police state, Walsh said. I'm describing what happens when good people decide the ends justify the means. When they start making exceptions to oversight because the threat is too important, the mission too critical, the stakes too high. Vasquez stood, walked to the window, looked out at the Santa Fe street. I left the NSA because I saw it starting. Small compromises, little violations, always justified by necessity. But compromise by compromise, violation by violation, we built systems that could destroy everything we thought we were protecting. So what do? Lena asked. We release the data. We trust that transparency, even messy and dangerous transparency, is better than concentrated power in the shadows. Vasquez turned back. But I can't make that choice for you. This is your data, your risk, your decision. Walsh looked at Lena. What do you think? Lena thought about the gun store, about being underestimated, about proving herself to men who didn't matter. Then she thought about Syria, about 43 people who died because she'd trusted the system. I think I'm tired of being used by people who don't face consequences, she said quietly. I think power without accountability destroys everything it touches. And I think if we don't stop this now, we're just delaying the inevitable until it's too big to stop at all. That's not really an answer, Walsh said. Yes, it is. Lena met her eyes. We release the data, all of it. We burn it into the open and let the consequences fall where they fall. And the operatives who get exposed, the people who will be endangered, will have the same choice we have: run, hide, or fight back against the system that put them at risk in the first place. Lena pulled out the satellite phone Ray had given her. We can't protect everyone, but we can stop one person from controlling everything. Vasquez nodded slowly. I'll need 6 hours to prepare the data for release. Multiple redundant copies, distributed servers, dead man switches that trigger if I'm compromised. When it goes live, it'll be impossible to suppress. Do it, Lena said. While Vasquez worked, Lena stepped outside and called the number Volkov had provided. He answered on the second ring. Ghost, I was beginning to think you'd reconsidered. Where are you? Close, waiting for your terms. Here they are? You come alone, no weapons, no backup. Meet location is public, daytime, lots of witnesses. You try anything, my people put you down before you take 3 steps. Your people? Don't worry about my people. Worry about whether you're serious about talking. Silence for a moment, then, I'm serious. But I need assurances you won't kill me the moment I sit down. Same assurance you're giving me. Mutual survival depends on cooperation. Besides, I need information more than I need you dead. Fair? Volkov's accent grew thicker, sign of stress. Where and when? Plaza downtown, tomorrow at noon. Sit at the fountain. Bring nothing but answers. And if those answers aren't what you want to hear, then you'd better hope you can run faster than I can shoot. She hung up. Walsh had joined her outside, carrying 2 cups of coffee from the shop next door. She handed one to Lena. You really think Volkov will show? Walsh asked. He will, because he's in the same situation we are, caught between larger forces, trying to survive, looking for leverage. Lena sipped the coffee. It was terrible. She drank it anyway. The question is what he knows and whether it helps or hurts us. And if it hurts, then we already have Vasquez preparing to release the data. Volkov becomes irrelevant. They stood in silence, watching traffic pass, people going about their normal lives with no idea that the foundations of their government were rotting from the inside. I keep thinking about Mitchell, Walsh said quietly, about the look on her face when she was trying to tell us something. She wasn't evil, she was just compromised, step by step, decision by decision, until she couldn't see the difference between protecting the mission and betraying everything the mission was supposed to protect. Lena finished her coffee. That's the danger. Not that bad people get power, but that good people convince themselves bad things are necessary. Is that what happened to you in Syria? Lena didn't answer immediately. The question sat between them, heavy with implications. Yeah, she said finally. I convinced myself following orders was the same as doing the right thing. That trust in the system meant I didn't have to think for myself. That if something went wrong, it wasn't my responsibility because I was just the tool, not the decision maker. But you learned. I learned that every trigger pull is a choice. Every mission is a decision. And hiding behind orders doesn't make you less responsible for the consequences. Lena crushed the coffee cup, threw it in a nearby trash can. That's why we're doing this. Because someone has to choose accountability over convenience. The next morning, Lena and Walsh positioned themselves in the Santa Fe Plaza an hour before the meet. Ray had arrived overnight with 2 of his contractor friends. All 3 set up in overwatch positions, invisible to civilians but providing security Volkov would have to get through if this was a trap. At exactly noon, Alexei Volkov walked into the plaza, alone, as promised, hands visible, moving with the careful precision of someone who knew he was being watched by multiple rifles. He sat at the fountain, crossed his legs, waited. Lena approached from his blind side, Walsh staying back with a clear exit route. You came, Volkov said without turning around. I'm curious what you think is worth saying. Lena sat next to him, maintaining distance, hand near the Glock under her jacket. I know who ordered the hit on Mitchell. So do I. Someone consolidating power. Someone high up. Volkov smiled. You've been busy. Good. That saves explanation time. He pulled out a phone, slowly, showing it was just a phone, and brought up a photograph. This is Admiral Hawthorne meeting with Mitchell 6 weeks ago, Prague, discussing project transfers and timeline acceleration. Lena studied the photo. Definitely Mitchell. Definitely Hawthorne. Definitely damning. Where did you get this? I have resources. More importantly, I have motivation to see Hawthorne's operation fail. Why? What's your angle? Volkov's expression went cold. Because 3 years ago, Hawthorne authorized an operation in Ukraine that killed my brother. Civilian target. Wrong place, wrong time. But Hawthorne's people pulled the trigger anyway because eliminating the actual target was more important than avoiding collateral damage. I'm sorry, Lena said, and meant it. So am I. But sorry doesn't bring him back. Revenge, however, Volkov gestured to the phone. Revenge requires leverage, information, evidence. I've been collecting both for 18 months, waiting for the right moment to deploy them. And why share with me? Because you have something I don't. Domestic credibility. I'm Russian intelligence. Even with evidence, anything I release gets dismissed as foreign interference. But you? Former American operative acting on conscience, exposing domestic corruption? Volkov smiled. That's a narrative people will believe. Lena considered this. The logic was sound. Volkov needed her as much as she needed his information. What else do you have? She asked. Communication intercepts? Financial records that complement what Walsh collected? Testimony from operatives who've been coerced into Hawthorne's consolidation scheme. Volkov stood. Everything you need to prove this goes all the way to the top, but it has to be released carefully, simultaneously, overwhelming enough that it can't be suppressed or spun. We have someone handling that. Vasquez, yes, I know. Former NSA. Excellent choice. At Lena's sharp look, he shrugged. I do my research. The question is whether she's ready to handle the volume of data we're discussing. She will be. Then we have a deal? Volkov extended his hand. Lena looked at it for a long moment. Taking this handshake meant allying with a foreign intelligence officer. Meant crossing lines she'd been trained never to cross. But those lines had already been crossed by the people she'd trusted to maintain them. She shook his hand. Deal. But Volkov, if you betray this, well, I won't. We both want the same thing. Hawthorne destroyed. Everything else is negotiable. They separated. Volkov walked away through the plaza. Lena returned to Walsh. Did he deliver? Walsh asked. More than I expected. Sí. Mas. Lena pulled out her phone, texted Vasquez. We have additional source material. Russian origin but verified. Can you handle integration? The response came immediately. Send it. I'll cross-reference and prepare for simultaneous release. Over the next 12 hours, Vasquez worked with focused intensity. Volkov's data merged with Walsh's research, creating a comprehensive picture of Hawthorne's consolidation operation. Names, dates, projects, authorizations, everything documented with the kind of precision that destroyed deniability. At 0300 hours, Vasquez emerged from her back room, looking exhausted but satisfied. "It's ready," she said. "Dead man switch is active. Multiple journalist contacts have been primed with partial information and are waiting for the full data drop. When I push this button, it goes to 15 different news organizations simultaneously, domestic and international. They'll all break the story within hours of each other." "Do it," Lena said. Vasquez's finger hovered over the enter key. "Last chance to reconsider. Once this goes live, there's no taking it back. Hawthorne will mobilize every resource to discredit you, to discredit the data, to spin this as foreign interference or domestic terrorism." "I know." "And you're certain?" Lena thought about the gun store one more time, about walking in and being laughed at, about being underestimated, but this time the laugh would be on someone who actually deserved it. "I'm certain," she said. Vasquez pressed enter. The data began uploading. Progress bars crawled across screens, encrypted packages sent to verified journalists timed to decrypt simultaneously. "How long?" Walsh asked. "The first stories will break in about 6 hours. By this time tomorrow, every major news organization in the world will be running this." Vasquez sat back. "Congratulations. You just exposed the biggest intelligence scandal in American history." The words should have felt triumphant. Instead, they felt heavy. Because Lena knew what came next. Investigations, congressional hearings, arrests, maybe, but also retaliation. Hawthorne had built an empire in the shadows, and empires didn't fall quietly. "We need to disappear," she said. "All of us. New identities, different countries, complete separation. Already planned." Vasquez pulled out envelopes, 3 of them. Passports, credentials, bank accounts. "I've been preparing exit strategies since Morrison called. We each go our own way. No contact for at least 2 years. If we survive that long, maybe we reconnect. Maybe we don't." Walsh took her envelope with shaking hands. "I never wanted any of this." "None of us did," Vasquez said. "But we're here anyway, so we make the best of it." Lena opened her envelope. New name, Rebecca Marsh, Canadian passport. Background as a freelance photographer. Clean enough to pass inspection, detailed enough to withstand casual investigation. "Thank you," she said to Vasquez. "Thank Morrison. I'm just keeping a promise." Vasquez stood. "Now get out of here. I'm burning this location in 3 hours. You should be across state lines before the sun comes up." They left separately, Walsh heading south toward Mexico, Vasquez north toward Canada, Lena east toward nowhere in particular, just away. She drove for 6 hours before stopping at a diner in the middle of nowhere, ordered coffee and eggs, sat in a booth by the window, watching the sunrise paint the desert in shades of amber and gold. Her phone buzzed. News alert. Breaking. Intelligence scandal rocks Washington. Admiral Hawthorne under investigation for unauthorized surveillance programs. Then another alert. And another. The story spreading like wildfire across every platform, every network, every front page. Lena read through the articles. Names she recognized. Operations she'd heard whispers about. All of it exposed now, bleeding into public consciousness in real time. Her phone rang. Ray Chen. "You did it," he said. "Whatever you were planning, you actually did it." "We did it," Lena corrected. "You provided overwatch. You kept us alive long enough to make it matter." "Still, Ray paused. "This is going to change everything." "Or nothing. Depends on whether people care enough to demand accountability." "They will. They have to." Lena wasn't so sure. History showed that scandals faded, attention shifted, powerful people found ways to survive exposure. But at least now the information was public. The choice was no longer in the hands of people operating in shadows. "I'm disappearing for a while," she told Ray. "Don't try to find me. Don't try to contact me. If anyone asks, you never met me." "I understand." Ray's voice was quiet. "Take care of yourself, Cross, or whatever name you're using now." "You too." She hung up, deleted the number, powered down the phone and removed the battery. Rebecca Marsh had no connection to Ray Chen. Rebecca Marsh had no connection to anyone. 3 days later, from a motel room in Kansas, Lena watched the news coverage continue. Hawthorne had resigned. Multiple investigations were underway. Congressional hearings scheduled. The machinery of accountability grinding slowly into motion. She thought about calling Morrison, thanking him properly. She thought about checking on Walsh, making sure she'd made it out safely. She thought about a lot of things. But Ghost had learned that the best way to stay alive was to stay forgotten. So she packed her bag, paid cash for the room, and drove toward the horizon where Kansas met Colorado, and the land stretched flat and endless under a sky that cared nothing for the small dramas playing out beneath it. Somewhere behind her, the world was changing. Maybe for the better. Maybe not. But at least now it was changing in the light instead of the dark. And maybe that was enough. 6 months later, in a small town in Montana where winter came early and stayed late, a woman named Rebecca Marsh took a job at a local community center teaching self-defense classes to women who'd never thought they'd need such skills. She was quiet, kept to herself, lived in a small apartment above a bakery where the owner didn't ask questions and the rent was cheap. Sometimes, late at night, she'd stand at her window and look at the stars and think about the gun store, about the laughter, about proving herself. And she'd realize that the people she'd proven herself to didn't matter. The proof had been for her. Not that she was strong or skilled or dangerous, but that she could choose, could question, could say no to power when power demanded blind obedience. That she was more than a tool, more than a weapon, more than Ghost. She was Lena Cross, and she'd made her choice, and she'd survived it, and that was enough. On a Tuesday that felt like any other Tuesday, a new student showed up at the self-defense class. Young woman, early 20s, nervous energy, the kind of person who apologized for taking up space. "I'm not very strong," the woman said. "I probably won't be good at this." Lena smiled, the first genuine smile in months. "Strength isn't about muscle," she said. "It's about knowing when to fight and when to walk away. It's about trusting yourself more than you trust people who claim to have all the answers." That sounds complicated. It is. But you'll learn. The class began. Simple techniques, basic awareness, nothing fancy or dramatic, just the fundamentals of protecting yourself in a world that didn't always have your best interests at heart. And as Lena taught, she realized something important. This was the work that mattered, not the operations, not the missions, not the proving and the fighting and the being Ghost, but this, teaching people to protect themselves, to question, to choose, one person at a time, one decision at a time, one moment of courage at a time. Outside, snow began to fall, the first of the season. Soft and silent and covering everything in white, hiding the scars, obscuring the past, making the world look clean and new even though it was neither. Lena watched through the window as the woman practiced her stance, concentration fierce, determination overcoming uncertainty. And she thought about the gun store one last time, about walking in and being laughed at, about the moment everything changed, not when she made the impossible shot, but when she chose to question the order to kill. That's when she'd won. Not against them, against the part of herself that had stopped thinking and started just obeying. The class ended. Students filed out into the snowy evening, chattering and energized. The nervous young woman stopped at the door. "Thank you," she said, "for today, for believing I could do this." "I didn't teach you to believe you could do it," Lena said. "I taught you to prove it to yourself. There's a difference." The woman smiled and left. Lena locked up the center, walked home through the snow, climbed the stairs to her apartment where nothing waited but silence and simplicity and the life she'd chosen. She made tea, sat by the window, watched the town settle into evening. Tomorrow she'd teach another class, the day after, another. Week after week, month after month, year after year, teaching people to protect themselves, to question, to choose. It wasn't glory. It wasn't headlines. It wasn't proving anything to anyone. But it was real, and real was enough. Sometimes the quietest person in the room isn't weak. They're just waiting for the moment that matters. And when that moment comes, when they choose courage over convenience and truth over obedience, they don't just change their own story. They change everyone's understanding of what strength really means. Not the loud, obvious kind, but the kind that questions, that chooses, that refuses to be just a tool in someone else's plan. That kind of strength doesn't announce itself. It simply is. And the world is better for it, whether the world knows it or not.